Bye. Wait till we're on. Can't be late. We have all these people. We have to be on time. We're pretty close. Are we on? How come we're not on there?
Oh,
Is it because of the Zoom?
yeah, because of this.
Okay. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is our Thursday, March 7th, 6 o'clock Plnbrd meeting. We'll start off with we'll start on the agenda. Board business, minutes from the February 1st meeting. Anybody have any questions or concerns with the minutes
I have
as
a couple
presented?
of comments.
Okay.
So, on the February 1st minutes, on page 3, item 2D, it says that I abstained from the vote on the open space and recreation plan, and that's not correct. I voted yes, and in fact, I was the person a couple meetings ago who said we should definitely support the plan, so if that could be corrected, that would be great. And then on page 7, the top paragraph, in terms of the number of years for the 225 Taylor Street special permit is 2 years, not 3 years.
Is it 2 years?
Yeah, in the minutes, it says 3 years. So if that could be corrected too, thank you. And then, you're going to like this one. Page 10, the last line of the final paragraph, it says, Nari thanked the Littleton apothecary representatives. But that's not what we were even
No.
talking about.
No.
So, and I listened to it, and it doesn't say that. So we need to remove that statement. So those were the comments that I had.
Anybody else? Make a motion, we approve minutes with the corrections as suggested. Want to second that?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Bills? Bills?
Yep, just one bill. So the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative Annual Conference is coming up next Saturday. Several Littleton staff and board members will be in attendance. One of the reimbursements is for one of the planning board members to attend. I get to, I'm not charged because I'm a moderator for it. Other staff is being covered by the HR training budget, so looking forward to that.
I mentioned it to the CPC people, and some of them, there are a couple breakouts that would be, anyway, they were very interested in knowing about it, and so in the future, we should distribute that to them also, maybe, or?
Sure. Registration is still open through the 12th, so if I forward that, I'll forward that to Carolyn.
Okay. Member input and updates for projects, Northern Bank, MPTA, Robinson Road. Anybody have anything?
I have some comments on the MBTA, if I could.
Okay.
My understanding is that we need 150 units there. And my understanding is that the average density over the sites at the Common and the site down there need to average out to 15 units per acre. So if we, that gives us the opportunity to create lower density housing. We don't need one big block of 100, 6-story building. If we can find 30 acres to zone, we can have a density of around 5 units an acre. And the average density will then be very close to 15. And I've got a couple of examples how that might work.
I want to clarify.
Yeah.
Is that actually
Pass
the
those down,
case?
please.
Because as I understood it, there was a supplementary finding that implied that, but we've never had any official confirmation of that, have we, or not?
I thought we had. I don't know
Okay,
where it
maybe we
came
have.
from. I mean, I've heard that a number of times, the 15 units average
Over the
whole site.
entire,
Right.
District, correct.
okay. But the question was, did the district have to be contiguous? Because we would
No,
have to.
district
okay.
does not have
Great.
to be
Does not have to
contiguous.
be contiguous, so we
Yeah.
can, so if we can find a couple of parcels, 3 or 4 parcels that add up to 30 or 40
And then my
acres
next
of
question
low
is, why
density.
5 units an acre?
That, it's an arbitrary number, but it's much closer, I mean, that's, gives us the possibility of a scale that works with single-family housing on the, I mean, it's low-rise, we can do duplexes, we can do, townhouses, we can do something that is in a more appropriate scale than a 6-story building.
But something that's going to address the middle housing,
Yeah.
yeah, the lack thereof here.
When do we have, Emily's not till the 17th, right?
19.
19th,
19th,
right.
yeah. So we have another, our actual MBTA meeting is going to be on the 19th. So how
Correct.
do we need clarification whether that, didn't we talk about that a long time ago? And
So what exactly is the question?
the question is, can we go with a lower density if we're within a half mile of the MBTA station rather than the,
Right, because we have close to 40 acres at 20 units per acre at Littleton Common, at the King Street Common site.
So it's averaged,
It's
because originally it was not averaged.
Right,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
too bad.
so
I
that's,
think one of the
right.
results of one of the 2 letters that went to the governor, or the
was that clarification. Yeah.
came back with that clarification, that the density had to average over all of the parcels, not each individual parcel.
Right.
Which is great. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it gives us an opportunity to really do something that works for the town and works for the state.
Our original workshops showed a preference for, but 5 units an acre is pretty not dense. I'm thinking, I grew up in a big house on
Yeah,
a
I'm
quarter
not-
acre in a whole neighborhood, and they were like substantial homes. and-
I'm not
yeah.
wed to 5 units an acre. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
some ballpark number.
something that could
that's
be
gonna
a different
reasonable
typology
with-
than,
I mean, it
that-
depends on the size of the lots that we pick or that get
yeah,
selected.
okay.
I mean, it's just something that's low density or much lower density than what we're going to see at the common.
And for sale versus for
Not
rent.
necessarily.
we
That
can't,
would-
No, I know we can't spec, but that
would
would
like for
certainly
sale.
be nice, yes.
So if you take a look at what was just passed around, want to jump right to the numbers. On page 3 is a couple of examples. And I put some out in the audience as well, if those can get passed around for folks who might want to take a look at what we're talking about. As Bartlett said, this is an example of what the concept can be if we have multiple different parcels down by the train station. And the very front page depicts the 6 different parcels that Chair Montanari reviewed at the last meeting on February 1. And then page 2 describes a little bit more of what Bartlett was just talking about.
Right, it lists the sites and the acreage of each site and the net acreage, which is where we're allowed to actually build. It subtracts wetlands and stuff like that. And the number of units, and then it comes up with the average density of almost 25 units an acre for the housing at the common, counting both the mill building and the IBM site. And then using that 25 or 24 and a half for the large parcels, there's a variety of ways we can pick smaller parcels that have a total of 150 units and end up with this 4.7 or 4.4 or 5.3 units per acre there, and then the averages of 15 or 16 for the total project for the town.
And so if, as we discussed at our meeting last time on February 1st, there were a lot of questions about density, and so we thought that putting something together so folks could at least see what we were talking about might be helpful to the overall conversation.
So the last meeting, we talked about multiple units, but zoning multiple units as opposed to just 245 Foster. Okay.
So it's just an idea, I'm just throwing it out there that
I think we'd all talked about early on that the lower density for sale units, the middle of the spot in the town of Littleton was what we were all trying to get at.
I believe the town will support something like that.
Correct. Okay.
And I think that's one of our goals, is to
Okay, well, obviously, we're going to hear from 245 Foster Street shortly, but we're also going to start addressing this in earnest on the 19th of March, because as we've learned in the town of Milton, is a key point about this, that we have to be serious about this. You know, they're giving up. What do we have what do we have still in the queue for, the governor still owes us? 15 million?
Well, it would be, just got the $9.5 million Mass Works and legislative earmark under contract. Those funds have not yet flowed to the town. Theoretically, that's at risk. And then the $4 million Mass Works grant from this past round.
I think that we're ahead of most towns because we have that
Oh, the IBM.
pre-existing zoning and proposal, and this gives us a way of taking advantage of it that is to everybody's advantage. It's a win-win.
Right, and I think the board asked to do that early on, build on the work that was already done at Littleton Common.
Great. Anything else? Any other inputs?
I just have update. I was told that the Northern Bank was approved to use one of the existing septic systems on site, which would allow them to begin construction before the sewer is completed. I took the opportunity to walk around Hager Homestead while my car was being inspected in the Neshoba garage, and it's very interesting. I mean, I think everyone should take a look. I mean, it's not complete, but I think for people who live there, it might be a promising, place to live. And then, and 12 Robinson is crazy underway. And that's, I believe, the first project that will be built under form-based code.
First residential.
Okay, but what else has been?
Well, there've been a couple approvals.
I know, but this is the first construction.
Construction,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So, it's interesting.
What about on Northern Bank? Any talk on when they might start?
I have no idea.
The last I knew it was being put out to bid, and that was months
Yeah.
ago. So they're obviously, hopefully by now have picked the general contractor and they're finalizing this, I would think in the spring.
And Maren, you said that they were working with the DOT, Mass DOT. Has anything happened with that? Or?
I haven't heard,
Okay.
which is usually good news.
Yeah, okay.
And the barber shop moved over to
Yeah.
the Tuttle House.
Saw that, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Where's Subway going, I wonder? Because that should be the next piece if they're knocking that building down.
Well, let's see, the first site for construction would be on the corner
Right,
where the
bank.
greenhouse was. It's where the bank is going. I think
You're right.
that's
We
their
were
first.
told that that lease was up in the spring, and it's soon to be the spring, so.
We'll see. Any more board business, and I'll open up to the public.
I'll have one more quick item.
Okay.
So the Affordable Housing Trust, we have updated our financials, and we're meeting with the CPC on March 20th to discuss formalizing the relationship for the way that the funding flows from the CPC to the Affordable Housing Trust. And Chair Montanari, who was a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, resigned, and we, as a result of the Select Board, welcome the new member, Kim Albertelli, at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. I'll open it up for, anybody want to speak about anything? Limit it to 2 minutes if somebody, I don't see any hands at all. I can't, nobody I don't think wants to speak. What a guess.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, a few things here that I want to speak on very quickly here, and that is on the MBTA housing. We cannot afford to go down the road that Milton went down, and we need not be kidding ourselves. Attorney General Campbell is going to take these towns and cities that don't comply with this law. She's going to take them to court, and she's going to win. So we need to concentrate our time in putting in something positive here, which is to locate some locations down there off of Taylor Street or Foster Street or on Foster Street for the MBTA housing. The second thing I wanted to speak to was regards to the environmental aspects of this MBTA housing over there, as far as the sewer needs that's going to be over there, because I don't think we can afford to put in septic systems over there. We're going to need some type of tie-in to the town sewer system, or we're going to have to put a miniature plant over there to do that. I'll speak on the public hearing about the 234 Taylor Street when it comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, so we have 6:15. King Street Common definitive subdivision, update of the covenant, timeline, next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris Raymond from TEC, here on behalf of Lapoli Companies, here to talk about two items, one of which is the updated covenant. As you might remember, at the last meeting, you guys had signed and approved the subdivision plan in the covenant. When the covenant was being finalized and the bank was going to sign it, they actually noticed a misreferenced booking page number for the deed. We then went to go update that, and during that time, actually, the financial mechanism that was put in place with the subdivision was underway, and a mortgage was issued on the site, and so we thought, let's just wait until that mortgage closes so that we can update the covenant with that information as well. So that has all been updated, and looking for your signatures on that.
So Town Council has reviewed the covenant. He recommends that the board request that the date of the subdivision plans reflect the date of the final plans. We're in the process of almost finalizing the peer review. There's just very few comments left to be resolved, most of which are very simple to resolve. If the engineer can pick if his team can pick a date for those revised plans, we can slide that date into the covenant. You can vote tonight, understanding that there will be an updated set of plans. And that way, when we get the covenant back, Town Council will back check it, and then I can have you sign it.
Is the board okay with that? Lisa, you all right? Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll vote that in a second. What about, before we do that, what about timeline and your next steps?
Yeah, so currently we're working on updating the master plan, as previously discussed, to incorporate the boutique hotel, as well as incorporate the Yangtze restaurant site into the master plan. Those plans are being finalized and will be submitted by next Wednesday, is the deadline, I believe, is for, so that we could present at April 4th's meeting. So we look forward to presenting the updated plan to the board on April 4th.
Great. Okay, so back to the covenant.
One more.
Go ahead.
So the big question always is, when is construction going to begin? When is this? What can you tell us about that?
I don't really know.
Okay.
Well, you have money
That's
now,
right.
so you can start sooner rather than
Yeah,
later.
and I know, the first piece obviously is we have to get the road
Sure.
constructed. so-
Well, that's what I assume with
Mhm.
construction, yeah.
Yep, yeah. So we're nearing the finish line on getting, all the plans and stuff finalized for that. As far as time frame.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have one
Go
comment,
ahead.
one question. So, going back to the peer review, there was one item that was deferred to the board, so I wanted to ask where we were in terms of documentation, Maren, for item number 1, which is the Form 1 application and site plan checklist weren't included, so I look to you guys to see.
Right, so, and their response is no response needed. This application was the peer review of the subdivision. Next time, so the site plan application was not required. Site plan application and checklist was not required for this process. Will be required when they come in with detailed site plans for each phase of development.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that was my question, and then I have a comment. Item number 104, the signed O&M plan, signed by Mr. Lupoli, and I just wanted to say thank you to him for signing it, and more importantly, to just put a word out to our planning board staff and to applicants who are out there. When that O&M plan isn't signed, or there is an excuse as to why it's not signed, that's just not okay. That's basically saying, I won't take responsibility for my project. So I appreciate the fact that he signed it. Thank you.
Okay, so back to the covenant.
Recommend the board vote to approve the form of the covenant for 550 King Street Commons definitive subdivision with the updated date of the final plans.
Do you want me to give you a date?
Are you more comfortable with the date now to put in there?
You would have to commit to the final peer review.
Putting the, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Can we do March 29th? Gives us 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's fine with me. Everybody else okay with that? Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the covenant subject to the town council's final review of it with all the checklists agreed straightened out for March 29th.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
I'll ask for a roll call vote. Bartlett?
Yes.
Elisa?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes?
And I'm a yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the 4th of
Fourth, yeah.
Fourth of
Actually,
April.
just time frame on that for signatures and stuff. I just want to make sure that we can get everything recorded for turnaround on that.
On the covenant itself?
Yeah.
Your team has the Word document of the covenant. Just update with the new
Okay.
date and send it over.
Okay. It can't just be in the. Can we scratch it into the final?
It's been, that's a good question for your council. It's been
Okay.
notarized. But we'll work on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll talk after.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we have a 6:30. Well, we got a minute or two. Great. So our next meeting is going to be the 4th of April.
Next regular planning board meeting.
Regular planning. We have a planning board meeting on the 19th of March here, right? This building?
No, we'll be in the
Sturts
Sturts meeting room at the Reuben Hoare Library. And the flyers, there's a stack of flyers on the back, on the chair back there.
And that's when the whole meeting's going to be nothing but the MBTA communities, and we'll have.
Right, and it's, the consultant's going to run the program and ask specific questions of those in attendance. We're searching for ways for people who can't attend, that specific time to provide input as well. Probably electronic survey will be the process for gathering more input than the few people that can come to a meeting on a particular night. Yeah.
Okay.
What was the time?
6:30.
6:30, not a 6 o'clock, it's a 6:30 meeting, so we can get home for a while. Great.
Yeah. Well,
Do we have any other issues we need to discuss for the next 2 minutes?
I got a couple updates for you.
Okay.
It's been a while since we met last. We did get notice from the Attorney General's office that the warrant articles from the Fall Town meeting for the firearms business zoning bylaw was approved. And I had updated you on that by email before. Littleton Hazard Mitigation Plan is moving right along. Departments and certain committee members are involved in helping to move that process forward. MAPC is our consultant on that one, and they should have a draft ready for a public meeting in May of this year. And so they will either do a separate session for that or present it one of the board meetings with that. With the update on that. As you noted, we have Innes Associates under contract for the MAPC follow-up work. And I just had a couple of interesting conversations with representatives from the town of Westford on their approach to the MBTA communities bylaw. But I had shared some of that at the last meeting, so.
So I have a question. I know that in the minutes it said that we still needed to work through what the contract would be like for Innes and Associates. So when do we get to do that?
Oh, that was the scope of services. She provided an updated scope of services. Would you like me to share that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Same. Very nice. That's the one that's referenced in that contract.
Okay. Anything else?
What
We're
else
good
is
for now?
new? What else is new? We have one new definitive subdivision application, a 3-lot subdivision for the 95 Taylor Street site. That was the one antique home that backed up, yeah. So that public hearing is scheduled to open on April 4th as well.
Great.
What about Newtown Road?
Oh,
Both of those projects.
yeah, when we get to that. So the Newtown Hill, Skyview Lane, we had noticed that they were doing some the developer let us know that they were starting some clearing on the site, but they were at that point, they were just clearing brush. Staff was out to take a look at it, and they will notify us when they start to do any tree removal. Anything else that you saw out there?
It covers it.
Okay.
And we haven't heard from the storage.
Storage, well, we'll get to that later this evening. They didn't have any new information for us. Well, we'll have that discussion when we get to
Okay, all right. Okay, well, it's 6:30 now anyway, so we have a development scenario from Cabot and Forbes for 245 Foster Street.
Listen, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it. We are happy to have an opportunity to introduce ourselves.
Probably need to, because it's going to be on, so they can hear you.
Okay. My name is Jay Doherty. I'm the CEO of Cabot and Forbes. And we have entered into an arrangement with the Long family regarding 245 Foster Street. My purpose tonight is to introduce ourselves and to share some thoughts we have. We do not have a plan, we do not have a proposal, but there are some things we can observe from what we've done already. I worked as a special assistant to Governor Dukakis in his first administration, servicing what he called his development cabinet, Fred Salvucci and several other cabinet figures. And I learned a lot from them about the value of transit. And funny enough, the company that hired me to put into effect some of this idea was Cabot and Forbes, a Beltway developer. The first efforts at transit development were begun in 1983, and they were begun in Wellington, in Medford, and they were commercial. And we stayed that way for many years, including major projects there. This is a major project in Newton. Anyone know what a Jordan Marsh is?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm comfortable now. Because when I say this is actually not new build, this is the conversion of the Jordan Marsh warehouse. My staff usually says, "What's a Jordan Marsh?" This was actually a very difficult conversion. It's a full renovation because the building was two buildings actually where you rode up the forklifts. So people think the atrium was architectural. The atrium was to split the building into two buildings. This was a very successful project. It served its purpose. Auburndale was very happy with it. It, as you can see, won some landscaping awards. As I bought the company, I began to shift its attention also into multifamily and residential development. This is our flagship. This is St. Gabriel's in Brighton. It's a very large urban project. It had had about 12 acres of land that had been abandoned by Stewart Hospital. As you know, a very professional and upright group. They weren't easy to deal with. There were two historic buildings on the property. You see them there, but most of their roofs were gone. And we restored these to actual historic accuracy and developed a large residential project with Mayor Walsh, who wanted to get grad students out of the housing of the neighborhood. About 60% today of the non-condominiums of the 550 are in fact grad students. There's another 10 to 20% that are medical oriented. There's about 1,000 people that live there now. It includes 111 condominiums. Go ahead. So we've been around transit. I've been around transit for all of the 42 years of my career. And we've been working very hard on transit in the last several years. And this chart shows you some of what we've done. So we have done large multifamily projects, some not so large. There's 160 units we did in Quincy, opposite the Quincy Adams Red Line station. It's a project called Deco. And we did the major project in Brighton. We've also done a major project in Woburn. The other things you see there are the red is under construction, one of which is a large project in the Fenway. God willing, it will open someday. You probably don't hear it often in the news, but I have news, which is there are no electrical transformers. I don't mean that as a joke, and I don't mean that as a temporary condition. I mean Eversource has no electrical transformers. Fenway's ready to open in September, but it can't because it doesn't have electricity to finish the building, and it has no prospect of transformers. But that's another discussion we can have. We also began construction in Wakefield. We have a picture of Wakefield. There's an abandoned building, the former Amica building on Lake Quannapoat, 250-acre lake. And we thought it was suitable for residential development, a zone there for special permit. It's a 225,000 square foot building. It was a very interesting example of marrying community goals with the practicalities of development. You can go ahead. This is what's being constructed now. It's a larger project. It's on 25 acres, and it's a little denser. It's 440 units. At the request of the town, the building that you see in the forefront is a large restaurant to use the lake and provide for public act. We'll be building a very large public park there. One thing about this that's interesting is this one got under the wire. And you say, what wire? Well, a wire came down in 2022 and hasn't left yet, which shut off all financing for all development. So if you are a construction worker and you're working on a life sciences building, you're completing it, you better bank the savings because there's no work after it. There's no more lab buildings that will be built in the near term, some GMP and tech industrial, and there's no residential that has started since 2022. This is one of the last ones, and that's because there's no financing to do it. And that's a very, very serious problem. I know people worry about being inundated with development. I can tell you that we'll be lucky over the next few years to be able to get maybe 1,000 or 2,000 units underway. The construction that is up now will peter out in 2025. And because of the financing blockage, which is underway now and hasn't ended yet, I don't think we'll see new units coming on the market until 2030 or 2031. We're going to look back on residential availability today, and that'll be the good old days. I know that sounds difficult to understand, but that's where it is. So we're under construction in Wakefield. if you go back to that green commuter map, so because of our experience in transit, we were monitoring very closely the MBTA Communities Act, and we began to work on it immediately when the regulations became available in August of '22. The first town to pass it was Lexington. We were the first project in Lexington, and we are the first project going through that process of MBTA communities there. We have a project that will probably be about 200 units on Concord Avenue, if you've been there, off of Route 2. So we're kind of on the shakedown cruise of how this is going to work. And how this is going to work is a lot more uncertain than you might feel as you look at the papers. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There are some things you can understand, but this is a whole new experience for the communities involved, the secretariats involved. Because of our experience in Lexington, we spent considerable time with Secretary Augustus. I've met with him personally about these projects and his staff. We're in regular contact with his staff. Lauren Jasinski is our liaison to Secretary Augustus. And we have been contacted and have spoken frequently with Attorney General Campbell. And in fact, she asked me to participate in a phone call. I was surprised to find out there was not one, nor two, nor three, nor four, but 5 assistant attorney generals on the call. She's hired a new staff and new assistant AGs for enforcement. And she has some ideas that may or may not mesh. This is not a baked cake. What you're going to find as you go along is things will keep changing. I mean, just for example, there is a large pot of money that's now being set aside for communities that comply. And communities that don't comply lose that money. So that pot of money grows much larger per complying community than you would have experienced before. So what you might have been able to do with state infrastructure funding, it's mostly infrastructure, that's going to change for those communities that are complying, because the communities that don't comply, and there will be several, they may not comply because they're behaving like Milton, or they may not comply because they basically write the zoning in such a way that it can't really be used, in which case it will go into purgatory for a couple of years while the Secretary and the Attorney General figure it out. And there's a lot of nuances that aren't fixed either, how the site plan review process works. And we're on the shakedown cruise with the Secretary and with Lexington. And so we're all learning how to make it work. We have 4 or 5 sites under contract. Most of them have not placed their zoning in, but we are working with the communities. What we try and do is work with the community before the placement of the zoning so that we and they know it will work and it will meet the requirements of MBTA communities. We're doing that a lot in Natick right now, but we're also working in Waltham and a couple of other communities. The green spots you see up there are the ones that are in the present sort of real pipeline. Contracts are done and planning is being done. The one that is closest to being an approved project is Lexington, and I estimate that'll be another 6 months of review and approvals. So that's the background we bring to this. The Littleton site is serviced by an excellent MBTA, very robust commuter rail line. That Fitchburg line is kind of the backbone because it runs into Cambridge and it has transfer points at Cambridge from Porter Square. I eventually think it will have an Alewife stop because Alewife is now a whole new city, and it will also, as you know, it goes into downtown Boston. It's a 34-acre site gross. That's the light-colored piece. It is owned by the Longs, and we are working with them. The site has a bunch of different physical components. The blue is what we see as the wetlands. This, by the way, may not match up with the state map. This is what we see on the site. This would be confirmed in working on flagging the site with our industry folks. I can't read the acreage. What's the acreage for the wetlands?
6.7.
6.7. This is Quinlan Locke. If we're privileged to work with you, he'll be the project manager. Then you have about the 10 acres that might be devoted to MBTA communities, which leaves us with 13 acres on the top, and then a small parcel of 4 acres on the bottom along Foster Street. before we get into these bubble diagrams, the land is quite a bit of terrain. You can see it's got quite a bit of wetlands. It's not going to be easy land to work. It, for example, would be very difficult to work and very costly to work if you were trying to do, and I'm not contesting the goal of planning, single-story or townhouse construction. It is not readily adaptable to that at a reasonable cost. One other thing that we don't have a handle on yet that's going to be very critical, I think you touched on it earlier, is what are we going to do about wastewater here? That's a very large question, and one that has to be tackled up front. So this shows the 10 acres of MBTA communities in red. It shows a block that we would lean towards senior housing for development as senior housing. What exact components that would take would be something we would be studying. I think the existing zoning has windows open for that as it stands, but I get the sense that people would like to know how the whole parcel is going to go, not just pieces. So we think that's a use that's very useful to study. The front land leans towards amenities. The population that needs housing very badly, I know the missing middle and I know affordable, and I'm not dismissing those, but about 65% of our key workforce, ages 24 to 34, 65% of them rent. And it's a very good reason they rent. They can't afford in Massachusetts to do anything but rent. And they're not renting at $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month. The question is whether they're renting at $5,000 a month. So when we talk about these numbers, people will say, oh my God, there's going to be units here that rent for $2,500 a month. For people that need this housing, who are used to now paying what you pay in the Cambridges and the other close-in suburbs, that's a reasonably useful rent. But that's what they need to do. They don't have the ability to purchase homes very readily, though. To buy a home in this community, I expect it to be a lot of equity. Right now, the mortgage rates keep you frozen out. And that's true of condominiums, too. So the demographic we serve are younger professionals. The reason for the anxiety about MBTA communities is that the younger professionals are leaving Massachusetts at 1,000 persons per week and climbing. I sit on the board of a bunch of employers called the Mass Business Roundtable, and I was used to their agitation about the lack of people to recruit. It's gone past that. All of them are 30% down in their recruiting numbers and actively considering relocation out of state. It's not fun, it's not a joke, but they can't get the people. They just can't get the people. There's a rumor that Lego, which is relocating from Fairfield to here for creative talent, that's why they come here, can't get people to relocate to Boston because they can't figure out how to do the housing. It's a very serious problem. That tends to be the group we are most used to building for, but we're guided by what the community wants. When we began building in Cambridge in 2013 or 14, Cambridge said, no families, no children, no playgrounds, no tot lots, no childcare. They wanted to see their workforce begin to get housing. Now, if you build in Cambridge, you have very set goals as to 3-family units and childcare and play areas. So things change as the needs of the community change. So when it comes to things like what should the project be, we take a lot of guidance from what the community wants. Does the community want to invite families here? And there are families that rent because they can't do anything else. Or is does it favor really this workforce group that favors single one beds and studio units? Oh yeah, go ahead. So the green area is just a concept that we've been working on. It's called Edge Sports. Go ahead. Can we go right to Edge? Yeah. Edge is a group that has unlocked the secret of building community recreational facilities at private expense, at private capital expense. They've done this in 8 locations. Flip to that right now if you can. You probably can't read those. And the locations vary as to what their facilities are. The facilities are usually an expression of what is needed in the community. So in some communities, They just don't have rinks, so there are rinks. In some communities, they don't have pools and they want pools, so there are pools. The facilities are usually quite diverse in their offerings. You keep going, see what else we got on this. No, go back. Unless you have images inside the building. No, no. No. No, go back to the
Go
main
back to the
one.
pickleball courts.
Yeah, where's the pickleball court?
We'll go to that one.
Go to the pickleball
There we
court.
go.
If you go to Wellesley, which is their flagship, it's about 125,000 square feet. For what it is, it's architecturally a more than acceptable building. They have 2 rinks, 2 or 3 pools, a great deal of indoor turf, indoor basketball courts, some are convertible, indoor walking track, and they often have organizations that want to be part of the offerings, physical therapy groups, and they often have amenities, cafes, childcare, and stuff like that. But what they have to do is to meet the capital obligation to build the building, they have to get the land for free. So if we were to go ahead with this plan, we would contemplate that the land would be available to Edge without cost. And whether that is a direct lease from us on a ground lease, or whether that goes through the town, donate the land to the town, let the town work the ground lease through. The ground lease usually becomes the vehicle for governing operations. That's something that can be discussed. They've been very successful at this. This is not easy to do. I tried to do it on my own a couple of times, and it's hard. And you have to partner with them in that they would hope and expect that your teams would use the facility, unless they have other facilities that are readily available. They do work with other communities in the region, but they're subordinate in terms of ice time and preference to the community groups that are part of this. So they confer with your we met with your recreation department, Jim Duggan and Alicia and Tim, and we began talking about it. They seem to feel there might be a place for this. As I said, the key is the initial capitalization, and that has to have the cooperation of either a public entity that already owns the land. What I would like to do with their concept, if we have the privilege of working here, and have that plan, is begin to shape that plan so it does some things that are kind of lacking. For example, these facilities generally don't think a lot about surrounding senior population. I mean, people who would like to have a heated pool, people who might need a lift to get into the pool, pickleball courts, things like that. So I think that they would be a major contributor there, and they would be as well for the residents in the MBTA communities land. We often work very hard on, we always work very hard on the natural terrain and the natural species. We've won several awards for that. In this case, we'd look for a really robust walking trail. I say robust, a robust walking trail as the community envisions it. It would be a public walking trail. It would certainly be available to residents, but it would be a public walking trail, and it would try and dovetail with whatever trails and facilities you might have. I have some experience in senior housing. It's not too far away from here. It's in Westwood. It's called Fox Hill Village. That's a very broad spectrum level of service. That's what's called a critical care retirement community, a CCRC. I'm not sure whether that's appropriate here. I'm not sure what's financeable in a location like this. It depends on what's needed. But we do have experience in that. We have been working on solar installations. In Woburn, we are working on rebuilding on the Superfund land. So we partnered with EPA, and we identified sites that are within Superfund that actually can be readily remediated, and as a result, we've built the first in the nation multifamily residential community on Commerce Way. It's about 300 units. And we're building another one, if we can get the financing, of 250 units right next to the rail station. There's about 10 or 20 acres that just can't have anything built on it. So what we arranged to do was we partnered EPA and the trust that owns the land with us, and there's a 2.8 megawatt substation solar station that is waiting for Eversource to flip the switch, which could be a while because it's Eversource. But Somerville is buying that. And we would certainly look here to the prospects, particularly on any parking areas outside for carports and to generate solar that. So that's some of the initiatives we would study. There are many issues to be studied, and we will study them with professionals. Traffic and roadways, wastewater is probably the biggest one, public safety. In Wakefield, they were traumatized by a 40B on the fringes of their town that was really awful, and there was a lot of car theft. So what we've done to sort of provide a comfort blanket is we're installing a 3,000 square foot satellite police office. And possibly because of the park we're building, there'll be a lot of events. So this will be, it's readily functioning where they can step in and run this. We also have an elaborate security system on securing cars on site, which is not difficult to do with technology these days. We have met with Municipal Electric and Water, and we'll be watching National Grid like a hawk. Not that it does any good. We worked for 4 years in Fenway with Eversource, and it just doesn't matter. It's a very, very difficult issue, but it's not your issue. What we typically do is if we think there's something meaningful here, we will rapidly, if available, confer with each agency head, and we did that in Wakefield with in-depth interviews, looking at what incremental capital needs might occur and how that measures against taxes. One thing, there's kind of a myth about these residential buildings leaning into eating up municipal revenues because they eat up municipal services. They don't, and the reason they don't is, first of all, much of the demographic, no matter how you shape it, is younger people, and they just don't need EMTs and hospitalization. The other thing is these are largely self-contained in terms of infrastructure costs. They pay for their own road upkeep on the access roads and the circulation. They do their own private waste pickup. They do their own utility structures. In Wakefield, the office building was projected when released to provide $400,000 in net revenue per year. We are projected at 1.5 million gross and about 800,000 net. And that was the ZBA put us through our paces with every single agency head. And so what you do is you work with them to find out what is needed in each of these areas and what they think it will cost. We use their estimates, basically. So that's how we come at this. And we think there's a good chance here to put together something that is beneficial to the community, I hope, and that meets the characteristics needed for MBTA communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you know, we're having a meeting on the 19th of March, and you're welcome to come in. This was just a brief overview to introduce yourself to the community and to the board. Board have any questions at this time?
I'll be at the meeting on the 19th.
Okay. Violet, do you have anything you want to ask?
Well, it just occurred to me during your talk that I've seen that red 10-acre parcel on the long site for every presentation that has happened here about that site. And I was just wondering where that shape came from, and is it locked in stone? Is there room to negotiate about the different parcels of land on that site?
Yes. What we were working from is the MBTA community's guidelines for Littleton, which call for 10% of the 50 acres to be within 2,500 feet of the rail station. You have other parcels that meet that. I can tell you that in my long experience with transit development, if people can walk to the station, it's a really meaningful advantage for everything, for their transportation, for your a lot of these, one thing that's hard for people to understand, particularly in Brighton, is a lot of people who live in these places don't really want to own a car. And if they could get away with no car, I've got 3 kids in this age bracket. One has reluctantly bought a car. But otherwise she's moved to Salem and she commutes to the Kennedy Building downtown by train. One lives in Cambridge and walks everywhere. I think she'd walk to Salem. One lives in New York, he lives downtown. But, you know, I never thought I'd raise a son who reaches age 30 and never owned a car. I mean, when I was growing up, you had to have the car. You weren't, you gotta got the car. They don't like cars. They rely on enterprise. They rely on zip cars. They rely on shuttles. We've founded several shuttle systems that have turned into transportation management associations. One in Waltham that's now part of the 128 TMA. And we've got one running right now in Brighton that runs from us at St. E's to Harvard and to New Balance. And these aren't necessarily carrying lots of people, but people really like the availability, and they can get on the app and reserve a seat and have their coffee and work on stuff. 250,000 people leave Alewife throughout the year and go on shuttles up Route 2 to places of employment. And that's because that's okay by them. They don't need to have, they got their coffee, they got their iPad. So that's the, it really, you know, walkability is really a big deal. People like to walk, and people like to walk as part of their commute. A lot of people sometimes will favor walking over some other form of transportation that can get them there because they want the walk. And they want the walk because it's pleasant, and they want the walk as part of their health regime. Our vision, as we've put it out to you today, is entirely malleable. And the only thing we will look to try and do is make it work. We can't take on a project that doesn't work, and right now, that can be hard. We think it will improve. We think that this could be we like to create places that have some vitality. St. Gabriel's, if you have the chance to go over there, we'd love to host you. You know, you go there, and there are graduate students in there having their coffee, and their business conference rooms. You'll occasionally run into someone who started up a business in the conference room. And this place, if we could master plan the 34 acres, has that potential. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Bartley, to answer your question about the red lot, if you remember correctly, we are the ones that created the 10-acre parcel so we could have the zoning at 150 units and the density of 15 units per acre. Now we've since found out that we can expand that, so that was ours.
That was really taken from the town vote last fall. That's where that 10 acres.
Thank you.
And you had mentioned a 10% within 2,500 feet, but we've been working under.
10 acres.
Oh, okay, you said percent, okay.
I
think
misspoke. I do that
so,
occasionally.
because I think it's 20% that we have to have within the 20,
That's correct.
Yeah,
I misspoke
okay.
twice.
okay, it's fine.
It's 20% of.
We're getting information from all directions all the time.
You know, we've been at this for 18 months, and it's new. It's wholly new. No, we've never tried to instill zoning at the local level in this state from the state, other than 40B. So it's not easy. It's actually quite hard. I mean, I'm working with Braintree right now. You folks are head and shoulders more organized and more insightful than Braintree is. You would think at the end of the red line they'd have a handle on it. Well, they put it all off until the end of last year. They started their hearings December 1st and had to have the zoning passed by December 31st. Shock and amazement, the zoning will never get passed by DHCD. And I don't know what DHCD will do when they get zonings that don't work. Whether they'll say, look, you're non-compliant, forget about it, you're off the list. Or whether they say, you've got 6 months or 12 months or whatever to remedy it. That's all new territory.
So you brought that up, and we've talked about that too, because we have been, I don't know, hesitant, but there are economic reasons why sites that are currently developed may never be developed.
That's correct.
And we don't know how that's going to be treated by the state.
I don't know for sure either, and the state is gradually waking up to the fact that several communities have deliberately zoned for that purpose.
Mhm.
That is to put zoning where there's an Amazon warehouse.
Right.
You know, in Lexington's case, I'm trying to keep this off the record. I had a chance to really sit down and review all of Lexington's 50 acres. And I was surprised to find that 5 acres were a cemetery.
Really?
Which I actually don't think qualifies. There was a church. There was a temple. And then there was this very successful, very robust 300,000 square foot office complex next to MIT Lincoln Labs. That's never going to be developed. When I really got through combing, I found 3 sites. We're one, a former Boston Sports Club is another, and then there's another site by Boston Properties. That's it. There's not, the notion of inundation with this is just, it's the other way around. I don't think this is going to, I think this is important. We'd like to be part of it. We're going to try and be part of it. We've been at this 18 months. We have one site that's genuinely in the pipeline. We're working in Waltham. Waltham has to be done by the end of the year. There's been no public plans. The mayor has given no guidance. And they got to be done by, we got 2 sites, and we think they're where the zoning's going to go. There's going to be very modest production. And I don't know what the state's going to do when they look at zonings that are paper, that are compliant on a paper exercise basis. I don't know. Norwood's done a great job of that, and they publicized it. They went to their selectmen and said, we're zoning this so no one will ever build on it. And that was the headline. I don't know. The problem they're facing is that the effects of housing as a cost on the workforce is becoming not an irritant, it's becoming catastrophic. I don't know what Boston's going to do. You know, these employers can't get people to commit to work 5 days a week in the downtown. And those buildings are now turning over. They're selling at 30% of their market value 2 years ago. The building I did in Newton that you saw there was purchased by Alexandria about 2 years ago for $245 million. And they were grateful when they were able to sell it about 6 months ago for a little over $100 million. $150 million loss in 18 months. And the new owners aren't going to keep paying the same tax rate. They're going to call for abatement. We don't have a life sciences market now. We really generally don't have hotels right now. They're very difficult to finance. We can't right now finance residential. And the retail world is going through a change that I don't know that we'll ever see reemerge. It's a very challenging environment. There are places that come up that look like they have special attributes. This is one. That's why we're here.
Thank you. Delisi, do you have any questions?
No, I want to just comment. I love the idea of the edge sports, because when we started studying this area five years ago, one of the input we received from the community in some of the workshops was, this would be a great site for a recreation center for Littleton, because we don't have a pool, we don't have skating, we don't have an indoor track.
I've seen them do it. When I first saw Wellesley, I'm a resident of Wellesley, reluctantly. That's another story. I was amazed. And I was amazed that they did it with private capital, and they've done it 8 times since then. So that vision is realizable if you and the community would like it. Jim Duggan said to me they'll want to generate traffic. And I said, well, I don't know how to get the kids to the recreation center unless you want them to walk all the way. Yeah, it's going to generate traffic, but you have to make those decisions. We're malleable. We're capable. You don't build on EPA Superfund land unless you're creative. We just purchased last August a $150 million site in Assembly Square that is now a Home Depot. We outflank the financing markets. We have reached to a public market through the internet. You can join it. And we've raised $160 million over the year directly from a network of about 2,500 individual investors, some as little as 25,000. A lot of high net worth families. And the common man doesn't believe the world has ended. Our institutional funders do. If you talk to Goldman Sachs, the world's over. We'll catch you later. That's not the way it is for people who work for. They believe in a lot, and most people believe in Boston one way or another, as we do. But they can. They're terrific, and we're here to make sure it works.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any questions?
No.
Anna?
Yes, thank you. So in reference to wastewater, I mean, this is a huge project that you're endeavoring here, and so I would like to hear your perspective and also the perspective of the representative from Light and Water who's here this evening, because it's a big issue. So what are your thoughts about it?
If we had this plan, which has certain economic ramifications as to the value of the project, and there was a leg planned to be extended to here, with a set cost, then we would be a direct contributor to that construction. And we would prefer to do it that way. We get the sense that you got a lot on your plate right now, starting with that. If that changes, the other thing too is, in compliance, in an affirmative, creative way with this, with the Secretary of Housing and others, they're ready to follow with money, real money, infrastructure money. So if we came to them and said, look, we want to do this, this, and this, and we want to do, we'll put in X million, and we need you to put in Y. That's they would be breathing a sigh of relief. They don't want to have fights like Milton. So if it were available, we do it that way. I think that probably the thing that we're going to have to explore the most closely is what the best solution is for wastewater. And if it works in cooperation with the town agency to do something, that's terrific. If we have to do some kind of other wastewater treatment on site, we'll look at doing that way. They are not inexpensive, so the capital you're putting there, if you could figure out a way to redeploy it to something that has a wider benefit, you certainly want to do that. But that, we know there's an issue. We haven't got the answer yet, but that's probably the first thing on our list is what do we do about that?
Do you mind if I follow up on that, Anna?
Yes.
So Dave Ketchen, Assistant General Manager from the Light and Water Department. So we did meet with Jay a few weeks ago in discussing this project. And while it's not impossible, there's a lot of challenges to bringing town sewer to that site with what we're constructing right now on King Street. Logistically, it's far away from that treatment plant. We have capacity challenges that we're facing right now with the existing build out with our discharge permit that we're exploring additional options on that. But our focus right now is getting more capacity for the common area, and then we could potentially explore other options in the future.
Yeah, one thing is these projects, well, first of all, they're not happening now, but when they do begin happening, they take time. A short period of time for a project to be fully committed to opening a door is 5 years. I thought that's what we did in Wakefield, and my staff said, no, boss, it was 7 years. And we were teamed with Wakefield like this, because the Friends of the Lake, we did a lot for that lake, and we were very closely paired with them. So there's a long lead time. You don't do this overnight. You won't see occupants there for several years. So you have time as long as you can rely upon the solutions. And so we would try and take advantage of that time to do whatever the best response is for what we can do, how we can merge it with the community needs.
I have one question, and it has to do with the senior housing. You put that up there. Are you thinking age-in-place housing? Are you thinking just senior housing, or what?
Yes.
Before open up to the public.
I think it's going to require some thought. A lot of the companies that do this are national companies, and they're not fluent in Massachusetts communities. So we're going to talk to a lot of people. We're certainly capable of doing a certain level on our own. Probably does not include, for example, memory care. And if we were to say that, if we were to find that there was a world of need for memory care, for example, we'll partner with someone. We'll partner with someone in some fashion.
But you're looking towards all the options in senior housing?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I think the concept of a conventional multifamily apartments, some form of senior housing, community recreation, and then amenities, there's a lot of synergy there. I mean, for example, I don't know if we could do it, but no one uses the MBTA parking lots at night. Well, when does the community recreational facility need parking? At night. We have a habit around Greater Boston, it really irritates me, of doing things that we call mixed use and then building enough parking to service each use. If you do a survey, which we've done, of commuter rail stations throughout 495 into Boston, the average use of the residents, believe it or not, is 0.75 spaces per unit. And that's because of who they are. That doesn't mean you have to say, well, that's fine, just do 0.75. I'm just saying that. So We could create synergy with the MBTA on weekends, not people taking the train on weekends when there are tournaments and stuff. We could see whether or not we'll have some at-grade parking lots. You can put leaching fields beneath parking lots and still put solar over them. Maybe that solves part of a need. I don't know. We're too young in this to know.
All right, thank
I'd
you.
like to
Go ahead.
piggyback on the senior housing. How does that relate to MBTA communities?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay, and why not?
Yeah, why not? Because a lot of 40B turned into something that it was not intended to be. It was really intended, originally when it was passed, it was 100% affordable. There wasn't any partition. When Marty Linsky wrote it in Brookline, it was 100% affordable, and they ran into a lot of resistance. So they started ratcheting up things to make it more palatable, and they finally made it, you do 25%, and it's 100% on your inventory.
Right.
But the communities, there's a lot of worry about housing in this area. There's been always a lot of worry about housing. So the response of the communities were to do other things that actually limited market housing. And the biggest one was age 55 restrictions. So a lot of Wellesley's conformance to 40B is age 55 restricted. That's fine until you get to a point where your employers can't stay here because they can't have people that will work here. We don't export goods, generally speaking. What we export is innovation. And the innovation's raw materials are the people that go to college here and stay or come in. They're not coming in anymore. And with the restrictions on immigration, it's even worse. We had a high immigration inflow that was offsetting the outflow to some degree. That's not happening anymore. So that's why it just doesn't produce enough housing, and it's a really critical problem.
I'm going to open it up to the public if anyone has any questions. We're running late, but I'll see if I guess everyone wants to wait till the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're running a little late. We have 6:45 planning board discussion, 80 King Street indoor dog park.
Yes.
I'm amazed. I know, but I'm
Thank you.
I know, I have no idea.
They're not for this,
I don't know. What are they here for?
because they would have been here.
I don't know what they're
That
here
was
for.
very interesting, wasn't that, Bartlett? That was very interesting.
Okay,
Everybody's leaving. They don't want to hear
It's been around
Oh,
for
I guess
a
they
long
were.
time like us, so it's like, yeah, you know a lot of stuff.
I guess they're gonna wait till the 19th, right? Okay, could you state your name, please?
Sure. My name is Kimberly Rogers,
Augustine Russo.
and we are proposing to open up an indoor adventure park for small dogs. It's about 2,000 square foot space, 80 King Street, Littleton, for dogs under 25 pounds, so small, a niche market. And we think that it's a very needed facility. I don't know if any of you have dogs. We don't, not like big dogs, we like small dogs. But there are not a lot of spaces. There are public outdoor facilities where you can bring your animals, but there's a lot of concern for safety, for cleanliness, all sorts of things. So we have been having a hard time finding, we just got 2 puppies this summer, and have had a very hard time finding a place where we can engage, interact, not just drop them off, it's not a doggy daycare, but where you, the owner, are with your dog, and you can enjoy some physical and mental stimulation.
Are you talking all indoors?
All indoors, yes.
So this isn't daycare, it's
Not
just
a doggy daycare.
drop-in.
Owners are with their dogs, and it's a
Okay.
limited number of people per hour, up to 10 is what we're thinking. 10 small, under 25-pound dogs. If you go, I don't know if any of you have gone to dog parks, but they can become overwhelming, especially small dogs versus big dogs. And having a facility where you can have a limited number, where the owners and dogs feel safe, that their dogs can engage with other dogs without the worry of you know, a whole herd of dogs coming at one if.
Is
one's
this
barking.
a daytime activity?
Yes.
Yes, we're thinking 9 in the morning to 6 at night. And there's it's a reservation system. So every hour, there'll be a 1-hour spot available that you book online through an app. There will be somebody there, you know, a person there, but people will have access via an application to get in and out. We'll have security cameras there just to monitor and watch. But yeah, just during the day.
Sort of like taking your dog to the gym.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exact same thing.
Where are you proposing to put the indoor part of it? I know, I think we're
So
all kind of familiar
when
with
you
it.
walk in, there's all the hardwood area. it used to be a music.
Yeah.
Before that, it was a florist.
Yes. So all that whole, I think it's about 2,000
Almost 2,000
square feet.
Yep.
And we'll have a soft play area, we'll have a ball pit area, we're gonna have a little agility area. And you have to imagine these are small, you know, our dogs are 5 pounds, 10 pounds. So 10 in that area is a doable.
So are there still going to be, there's some apartments as part of that building?
There are. And the entrance, if you know that building, there's an entrance on when you're looking at it on the right down below. So the customers will come in through that entrance, it's on the opposite side of the apartments. And there's walls and doors that close off the apartment area to where we would even be for noise, I guess.
So historically, there was an application for an indoor boarding facility sort of down the road where 495 meets that road. And unfortunately, they applied under the name The Barking Dog, which was really, really a mistake.
Yeah.
And so I think you would find that that's the major concern.
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10 small dogs, 9 to 6, it doesn't seem like a big issue,
Yeah.
but,
It should not be, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's enough separation, because when we went to look with the realtor, because it's for lease, we made sure that there's actually a space and then a kitchen, which we're not even gonna use, that would be completely closed off. And then we'll have, kind of a check-in area, seating area, whatever, and then the puppies, but,
and
10.
and you've looked into, there seems like there's enough parking there.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
max
biggest
up
thing
to
is,
10 an hour.
as Jeff was saying, is the mitigation of the noise.
Yeah.
Because you have residents behind you, you have
Correct,
residents
there's
to
a
the side.
residential
Yes.
building
And
there.
beside you, too.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're sure that there's not gonna be a nuisance from the dogs barking?
Very confident.
Yeah, there would be.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you want to go like
Again,
soundproofing or.
Again, there are smaller dogs. I'm not saying one of our dogs will bark occasionally. The other one doesn't say a word ever. I don't know why, but the smaller dogs aren't traditionally.
And they're engaging in a play with the owner. I can't guarantee, everything.
Well, I think
The
that-
owner is going to be there.
I think the difference between that and what Jeff was alluding to with the doggy daycare, back then it was boarding and you have the
Sure. owner
owner right there, so the owner it's their responsibility to keep
Sure.
the dog quiet too, so that's definitely.
Yeah, and we have a
Right.
rule, there is a rule in place, excessive barking, if you have a dog, even doggy daycares, if your dog is an excessive barker, a behavioral problem, they.
Do you have a facility somewhere already that
We
you?
do not,
Oh, this
we
is-
do not.
Are
This
there
is a
other
new-
ones that you've looked at, or?
So the closest one that we can even consider a comparison is in Chicago. So there are a lot of, I don't know if anybody has been to, there's a couple in Boston that do, it's a bar that allows dogs. So that's a whole new concept that is coming to light. A lot of places, you can just Google dog bars and they're kind of everywhere now.
So,
Cat cafes.
There's cat
Cafes,
cafes,
yep.
they're not as big, but yeah. So for us, it was more important that an owner have a nice, clean facility where you can just play with your dog for an hour and be with them, engage with them, and not have to worry about the safety or health. I mean, there's a lot of health concerns with bringing your dog to a public park. There just are. People don't pick up. They don't.
Do you have any questions or concerns? Anna?
No, I guess I just never imagined that this would be a use in an antique home.
Can I say, I'm 62, never had a pet. I love animals, never thought I'd own a pet. This one comes along, now I have two. And it's life-changing. It's something like if you had said to me, you didn't have a pet, I would say, like, I don't get it. But it is, and when you can spend time, and a lot of people do. Now, we have the issue, we got two small dogs, and one is literally 5.5 pounds, and the other one is 10.1. They're tiny, and we have a really small house, which is why we got really small dogs. So we wouldn't be, I'm not gonna get a big husky put in a small house. So, and like I said, we wanted to bring them out, to get them out of the house. So we went around looking for places and literally not to be found.
In this building in particular, say the antique home, there are other places we considered, but they're all warehousey, dungeony, dark. This facility happens to be just the right size with bright windows. You feel like you're going into a nice facility where it's bright, it's airy. You kind of feel like you're outside, but you're inside, because if you know the property, there's a ton of windows there and a ton of light. So that's why this property kind of came on the market. We're like, if we can make this work with the little dogs.
I have a big dog, so a couple big
I
dogs,
know.
couple big dogs, so it won't. I'm sort of fascinated by it, and I guess the question from Aaron is, what do they need from us for this? This is a use that is not anticipated
Correct, that's our question.
by our use
Well,
table.
right, so this is one of the few sites in town that zoned residential, but it's grandfathered because of the prior, both the florist shop, the greenhouse floor shop and the music store, which then expanded,
Right.
so.
This predates zoning. so
As
this is
far as staff can tell, that use is similar enough to the prior uses that it should be allowed.
And my feeling about the noise, potential noise, is it could not be more than the trucks on that road that are continuous and, just lined up. Of course, we have a noise bylaw. You should check into it. And, but anyway, it's interesting.
Anybody in the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, Diane, yes, you're perfect.
74 King Street, I'm right next door. I've never spoken against any project coming to this town, but I'm speaking against this. They're talking 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock Monday through Friday. They're talking 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock on Saturday. And they're talking special events on Sunday, 7 days a week. All right, they're talking every hour, 10 cars going in there, possibly, every hour. The traffic on that road is horrendous. So now you're talking 10 cars going in and out of this location. Now we've got that new development out back. They have cars going in and out of that road. Now you're adding more traffic going in and out of that location. That's an accident waiting to happen. I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about the noise, because I don't care if you're saying that there are 10 small dogs, but 10 small dogs going in every hour, the people going in and out, you don't think that there's sometime going to be some kind of problem? 10 dogs. It may be the nicest dogs possible, but who knows if there's going to be an issue. I'm sorry, but I would strongly suggest that this not be accepted. This is my concern when they changed the zoning at that location of what was going to come next if the music store didn't succeed. What were we going to put in there?
Thank you. Obviously, site plan. What else would they have to go through?
Well, that's up to you, because the use seemed, building inspector and I talked about it and looked at the zoning, and the use felt similar enough that that was allowed. If you would like them to go through site plan, they're not proposing any changes on the ground.
I get that, but I think we need to at least talk about noise. I think at the very least it deserves.
Right, and the site plan process would allow any conditions that you felt necessary. You could just mimic the proposal that they have.
If coming back in with, say, electronics store or something along that line that was consistent with the, although I'm willing to bet.
Music lessons?
I was gonna say that.
Noise too, you know, but anyway.
Yeah, there's noise there.
I think we should at least entertain a site plan, but.
Sure.
Mr. Sanders, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have a little bit of concern, and that is, if someone has a dog that's 8 pounds, that comes there, they're gonna weigh these dogs when they come in. They say small dogs, you know. You
We
get
actually
10
are.
small dogs together, they can make a whole lot of noise, especially where they are not used to having other dogs there, and you got 10 people in there. It's most likely that you're gonna hear noise from those dogs. You don't have to worry about the truck going by making noise, because the dogs are gonna keep up the noise for you there. So I'd like to know how they eliminate and select dogs that are coming in that they're saying small dog, 5 pounds.
Yep.
What if you get 8 pounds or 9 pounds?
So-
What do you do? How you eliminate it?
Yep, no, to that
We have
point,
that.
all owners will have to show proof. First, they have to sign a liability waiver. Second, they have to sign terms and conditions and understand the rules. But they also have to upload their vet vaccination records, rabies, bordetella, and,
That's the only two I can think out of the three. There's
and
another
now
one.
mine is.
And their weight?
And their weight,
And their
yes,
weight,
so there's a
yes.
certificate that we can provide to their veterinarian to sign off on, or they can provide, like our vet gives us an actual vaccination record. Now, we also have an application in which those records, when they're uploaded, they automatically will default to a renewal date. So when a member's rabies expires, about 30 days before that, we will get notification and the owner will get a notification saying, hey, member ABC, your dog's rabies is about to expire, you need to upload the new vaccination card.
One last question.
Yeah.
What happens when you get owner come in with a dog that doesn't behave very well and it's always barking and you know?
Yep, so temperament, yes, we will have somebody there monitoring dogs' temperaments. So if there is a dog that is, you know, bitey or yappy, that is a rule and condition that they sign off on for excessive barking, that they will be
Asked to leave them.
asked to leave, yeah.
You
And
do know all dogs bite, right?
they do, and in Massachusetts, it's strict liability for dogs. It's all on the dog owners, which is why we have them sign a liability waiver. Massachusetts is actually a unique state to dog bite laws.
So I think we need a site plan. I think we need, and you need to focus on how you're gonna be a good neighbor to everybody around you, to show that.
So now the windows are closed. I guess, is the noise concern when they're in there?
Yeah,
I mean,
obviously.
because homeowners have, how many dogs can you own before you have to have a kennel license?
So
in Littleton?
so the site plan process was fairly simple when you're not providing any, proposing any changes on the
Right.
ground. You could do that as soon as your next meeting,
Yeah,
which
we
is the
could do it on the
April
next
4th.
meeting, but
Can
just,
I ask that question? How many dogs can you have in Littleton before you have to have a kennel license?
I don't-
Three.
yeah, I don't think we
So
have.
owners can have up to 3 without any, I know it's 8 to 10, but
Right. I think
nonetheless.
the two issues, as Diane stated, is the turnover over there, 10 every time, and what it's gonna sound like,
Right.
you know?
Okay.
So just try to find out what you can for us. We'll do a
Sure.
site plan, we'll have you can come in next month, bring a
Traffic
site.
as well.
You've got a very busy street. I don't think 10 cars
You
is.
don't think 10 cars trying to pull out of there isn't gonna cause an issue?
I think it's, that traffic situation is terrible. And it's not caused by this property.
No.
It's caused by all of the industrial,
Yeah.
properties in
I
air.
understand that, but I'm saying.
And I
that
think it's
coming-
unfair to penalize this property
Yeah.
for this
I'm saying you're
overall
going,
problem.
so I'm trying to be proactive and say, when those 10, every hour, 10 cars pulling in and out of there, I'm just saying, when an accident happens, because we're now having an extra, you're talking from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and then who knows what the hours are on Sunday because it says special events. That added traffic is going to be causing an issue.
It's going to be a lot less than what's coming out of 160 Air Road with the dispensary there, and so.
Then you got,
Yeah, but that's a very bad stretch right there between.
That is
those-
because of
between
that, those two
stoplights.
streets, that Mill Road and that other street.
So you'll be
And
able
Mill Road is
to,
different.
right, during the site plan review process, you'll be able to take a look at that. You do have very narrow jurisdiction on that part.
okay, so why don't you, if you want to continue, why don't you bring us the site plan?
Chair.
Yes?
Sure.
Hi, Kim. Can I just ask one question? Have you done research as to how many dogs actually live in the area that fits? Like, have you,
It's like
what's the
90 a
survey
day.
of that?
I didn't, it's funny, because we were
I mean, I
looking
have
at a
no
couple
idea.
other,
I've
we
always
didn't
had
call
giant dogs.
Littleton. Yeah, we didn't call Littleton to see actually how many dogs are actually licensed. My guess is in this town,
Unfortunately
4,000 or
for
5,000.
you, Diane is the person who has that info.
859 dogs are licensed. We have 1,400 dogs in this town.
Wow, 1,400, 800 licensed?
That's correct.
Oh.
Those buggers. I'm just curious, how many are little? I have no idea.
They don't take that data when you register on with the town, unfortunately.
One last, and then we're going to move on,
Yeah,
yes?
because that would be 90 dogs a day. How could there be 90 dogs under 25 pounds that need this service every day?
But that's not
That's
our
not- yeah, that's
decision.
not- right.
That's, that, you have to assume that they are
Yeah.
developing a business plan.
Correct.
That's not for us
One
to.
last, way in the
That's
back.
what
Go ahead.
Yeah. Mike Sheldon, I don't live even close to where you are, but the neighborhood in which I live happens to be so quiet that people like to take their dogs for walking, and it goes on as, it's a function of the weather, admittedly. My concern is not about your dog, it's about the other dogs in the neighborhood, because when the dogs are out for walking, it doesn't wake up all the dogs in the neighborhood.
Yes.
It's not the dogs being walked, they'll respond, but it's the dogs that live 4 blocks away. Don't underestimate the ability not only of the dogs to basically be quite adventurous, their ability to smell is quite, makes ours look like primitive, which we aren't. So be careful what you wish for.
Thank you. So if you want to proceed, we'll
Okay.
we can
Yeah.
talk tomorrow and
That's
get on
fine.
the agenda.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hearing
Thank
us.
you.
Okay, 474 Great Road, Development Sketch Banquet Drive-Through.
Good evening. Bruce Ringwald from GPR. Also with me this evening is James Mitchell from Tropic Star Development and Sherry Gould. Maren, if you could.
Yeah, I got to share through the Zoom, so it takes a moment.
We're here to have a conceptual discussion about a proposed Chase Bank at the corner of Russell and Great Road at 474 Great Road. And
So you wanted to start with the,
start with that set, yes, please. So this is just an overview aerial showing the location at the corner. This is the site of Neshoba Lock. It's a 0.4 acre parcel, 15,880 plus or minus square feet.
there we go, surprise.
You can go to the next slide. It zooms in a little bit closer. That's a good one to stop at. So this is the existing conditions right now. As you're aware, many of us have been by it a million times. There is a driveway onto Great Road and a driveway onto Russell Street. A fair amount of parking in there from the Neshoba Lock trucks. And if you can go to the next one. So the proposal is for a bank, Chase Bank, as I said. It will not have a drive-through teller. It would have a drive-up ATM, a 24/7 ATM in the foyer. And I'll get into the inside space in a minute for the, the next slide, but right on this one, the bank would like to try to go with a streetscape, New England style architecture, which I'll show you in a moment. They would like to have 16 parking spaces. Zoning would call for 12. The existing driveways would be slid as far down from the property intersection to the edge of the property lines. So right up along the property line on Russell Street and just back far enough on Great Road. We would propose that Great Road would be a right turn in and a right turn out only, given the location of the traffic in the multiple lanes there. And that on Russell Street, it could be either either way in and out on that. That would allow for circulation around the building. And again, the building being a streetscape right up to both Great Road and Russell Road, being set back slightly more than the existing structures are that are pre-existing non-conforming on this pre-existing non-conforming lot. That have handicap space. The existing site is at about 48% coverage of impervious area. This is in an aquifer protection district, as well as the overlay district of West Beaver Brook and underlay of residential district. This current site has zero control or treatment of stormwater runoff. I have had discussions with Littleton Light and Water where the existing site is already over the 30% and doesn't have any natural undisturbed area on it. It does have grass areas on it and some trees, but it's it's all been disturbed at one point or another on the site. This proposal here is at about 85% coverage. It's a 2,900 square foot building, and then the parking and the spaces around it. So it's got a substantially more coverage, but we'd be looking at a new septic system on the property and in treating the stormwater and recharging the stormwater on the property. And this is where Light and Water was pleased to hear that there would be some sort of treatment and recharge where there is zero today. The bank itself, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Again, no drive-up teller, just a drive-up ATM. Have basically 5 offices for meeting with a banker, working on loans, etc. Restrooms, waiting area, and a couple of manual teller booths as well. And if you could go to the rendering, please, which is the next piece.
Okay, it's hard to run a Zoom and get to your tabs.
I can relate. So many of Chase's banks are more modern looking than this. This has been tailored to try to fit with the streetscape, with the surrounding architecture of the residents behind, but still the commercial that's across the street as well. So it's a brick and stone facade with asphalt shingle, some dormers, and trying to fit it in so it looks nice. Landscaping would be low landscaping on the corner so as not to interfere with the sight lines, and fairly straightforward from that respect. It would be a site plan special permit because of the aquifer district that it's in. And as I mentioned, it is currently over the 30% impervious, and we'd be looking to go above and beyond that impervious coverage for discussion as well. That basically covers what it is that we're proposing. We're looking for your feedback. We have done another concept that pushes the building to the rear of the site and shows a reduced number of parking spaces. It brings us down to about a 70%, and it just meets the zoning requirements, but it doesn't meet the bank's requirements for what they would like to see on the site. And we're leaning heavily towards the plan that we had up first. We just wanted to show that the difference between what they're looking at of 16 parking spaces versus 12, and making the site work in either direction. Based on past experience, we thought that the streetscape would be more preferred by the board and in the town. And we'll turn it over to you for thoughts and questions between the two.
Thank you. Bartlett, any questions, comments?
Not yet.
Delisa?
I'm sad to see another bank though, but, besides that.
Jeff?
I'm glad that we've landed on the rendering, because it's pretty misleading regarding the landscaping. There, with that driveway, there just isn't much left. And I'd love it if it looked like that, but it's not going to look like that. It's like this much. And I guess the question is, both site plans show really a lot of impervious area taken up by the drive for the ATM. And gotta say, that's like the least, I don't know, I just, that's my comment.
Okay. Anna?
I concur with Jeff's comments, and I seem to recall that this particular site had issues on the corner with, didn't we deal with something like with boulders had to be put there?
It had to do with, that's the other thing that came, it had to do with sidewalks. And on your presentations, you might want to document the sidewalks on the other side of the street, which is, because this will come up, which was, I think, what we came up with was that's, they're walking down Russell Street along that sidewalk, and there's a crosswalk and this and that, and there wasn't going to be anything there. But and it was the neighbor that was bringing it up, and it had to do with the boulders.
Yeah, I remember that piece of it. But yeah, another bank, and we're going to see a house. Wasn't there a house there as well? Or
There's an empty bank just down the street.
Yeah, and there's empty space on
Well,
that
it's
point.
basically an ATM that's maintained for an ATM location.
There's a building and a bigger parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm because banks don't know what else to do with their money, so I'm just annoyed.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience have any questions or concerns? Oh my, Mr. Rambacher.
Mark Rambacher, Hartwell Avenue. Will there be a sidewalk between, I don't see a sidewalk on that rendering going towards the police station. It's dangerous if you have to walk there now. They are putting sidewalks up when they do redo at Beaverbrook, the Rotary, there's sidewalks and things, so if there's plans to sidewalk the entire neighborhood at some point, this should be part of it as well.
Well, there is a sidewalk across the street.
But on Beaverbrook, I think when they're talking of redoing the Rotary at Beaverbrook, and there's sidewalks on both sides in that plan. So if we're putting sidewalks in somewhere, it'd be nice if the sidewalks all eventually connected, and we didn't have these islands of sidewalks.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've seen plans not dissimilar from this over the last several years proposed. My question has always been, what would the permitting process look like for allowing over the maximum impervious cover? Because under the Aquifer Water Resource District bylaw, there are no potential for variance. So it would have to be a planning board vote to allow it for, if
85%.
I would not be in favor of increasing the impervious.
What is it right now? Do we have any?
Right now, we're at about 48%.
So it's right below that 50%.
Right, and the planning board.
It's a 30% threshold
Right,
in the
right.
Aquifer Protection District.
Well, and which is not unusual for some existing sites. And the planning board has worked with redevelopment of some sites if the water quality based on the stormwater is getting better. But that's your call to make.
If I may, that was my discussion with Littleton Light and Water as well, in that there is no treatment right now on the site. It's all runoff from the site. And we would obviously be looking at treating the site, treating the water. You have to treat the water before you can recharge it into the ground. So that would all be part of what would be proposed.
Could you break out the impervious due to the building and the impervious due to the paving? And because, there is pervious paving that is possible.
Yep, there is. There are also other treatments that are better than dealing with the pervious pavement, where you collect the water and the water gets to be treated for TSS, phosphorus, and then discharged into the ground. So that does actually a better job than just pervious pavement.
Mr. Sanders, you had a question?
Yeah, can you tell me exactly the location of the 474 on Great Road there, the junction of the light there with Russell Street and comes to Avenue? Is it that corner or is it over?
It's that corner
It's
right
that
there.
corner.
It's that corner right there. And you want to put a drive-through bank there?
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me?
It's not, let's be clear, it's not a drive-through, it's a auto accessed ATM.
It's a bank with an ATM.
Drive-up ATM.
Right.
A drive-up ATM.
Correct.
Does any of the other banks have that?
Yes.
So it's
Pretty
not
much
a
every bank.
drive-through,
They're not proposing a drive-through, they're just a drive-through, an ATM there.
just for the ATM.
That's
Get
correct.
your money.
Mhm.
Drive away.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, wasn't Russell Street supposed to be sewered? Or is it my imagination?
No.
No?
Going across.
At one point, that was part of the discussion, whether or not it would be.
So
Right.
those are old plans?
You're right. And there is, Workers' Credit Union site is directly across the street from this, extends for a very long way. They have the building, the redeveloped building that's there now, and then they have the pad right next to that, that is slated to be a bank branch in the future.
Oh, in the wetland?
No, remember, at the front of that, they
Yeah.
they worked with Conservation Commission on getting
It's on the
permitted.
side of the building, right?
Yeah,
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 standalone.
correct.
Anybody else, any other questions or concerns? Or, go ahead.
Bruce, if you put sidewalks in on the bank side of Russell Street and Wade Road, there wouldn't be any green space left.
That's correct. I mean, there would, but it'd be minimal.
I mean, I think you do need to document the sidewalk situation, and Mark had mentioned the Beaverbrook improvements, and that's sort of an issue because, first of all, how you do a sidewalk around a rotary is beyond me, but there's just so many discontinuous, I mean, we come up against this, there may never be a connected sidewalk if you put it in there. But I mean, I think you need to, it should be up for discussion. I mean, who's going to be walking there? I don't know. You'd have to go by through the house next door, and they're not going to be building a sidewalk, and then it wouldn't have to go to the police, which I guess, I don't know. But when this came up before about, it was sort of established that the sidewalk on the other side of Russell Street was the primary pedestrian way of
I don't
getting.
think so, because the sidewalks are coming up Russell Street.
Yeah.
They've got to go somewhere.
Yeah, they go to the
They go
point.
that way, but what happens if they don't go that way yet? So that's what Mark's talking
They,
about.
well,
They're going-
it's
They go
possible.
past the tire barn
And they
and
go
Right.
by the tire
all the way
barn
down.
and
And at any rate, you can't get over the bridge, you know, I mean, there's a tough thing. But it should be discussed, but I'm not sure it's a problem that your side can solve.
understood. I've made note.
Okay. Anything else? Do you want to?
I just have one quick comment. So to, I presume the property owners, so I have no qualms with any property owner wanting to, you know, move on and sell their property and do well by it. So I hope you don't get me wrong. I'm just not thrilled that it's a bank, that's all. Just wanted to say that.
We wish, you know, unfortunately in Littleton, we have very few choices, so.
Can I make a few comments, if that's possible, just regarding the architecture and looking for some feedback? I'll try to keep it as quick as possible, because I know we're running over. Jim Mitchell from Tropic Star Development. So in regards to the rendering and kind of the design as a whole, I guess, and next steps, we'll definitely look to, I guess, address as many concerns as possible. I'm hearing what you're saying. I understand it's a small site. It is directly at the main entrance of 540,000 square feet of retail, which is why we want to be here. Our company to date has done about 8 banks. We've worked with Chase before. We did the one in Portsmouth in front of Whole Foods. So this particular design, I think the only thing that bothers me is I am a symmetrical person, and I feel that I need to add a dormer to the roof. However, I was thinking pitched roof would fit much better into the neighborhood area, similar to the houses. I mean, the bank, in my opinion, is a glorified home. I mean, that's the way in which we build them. The inside is the difference. But basically, you know, windows, siding is very comparable to what you would probably build in most homes today. And so at any rate, I guess I'd like to add a dormer to the roof, but Chase's kind of prototypical or prototype desire is kind of a modern building. And I know that the Point has a lot of flat roof buildings or structures on that side. So I guess just kind of understanding if that's something that is a hot button or not. We could most certainly go either way, but my attempt was to try to make it feel as New England as possible. We do have the shake element shown too, but we could most certainly go to a clapboard siding, alter the colors of stone, change it up that kind of way. I also kind of drove the bus on going streetscape, because most every community that we're working in now wants the building to sit on the street, but I know that this site presents some issues as you move closer to the mast arms with sight lines. So that's why we felt that the ATM drive lane was best around the building there, pushing it, you know, let's say 15 feet off the property lines for visibility to kind of enhance that. So those are kind of the, I guess, the reasons why, or method to my madness, I guess I would say. So any feedback there would be appreciated. As far as landscaping, I'm a big proponent. We don't want any light to leave the site, so everything would be dark sky compliant. And then the actual cars that would be circulating the site, I'd recommend personally that we do like a boxwood hedge or something like that, so that the light is not coming off the site as vehicles are circulating around. So those are some of the elements that, you know, we're looking at. Street trees is a big one for me, that we try to add, you know, to, I guess, enhance the overall aesthetic of the site. So just appreciate any feedback related to kind of what we've designed to this point. Your point about porous pavement, I've already discussed it with our client, and they're not opposed to it at all. They're very amenable to it. It's more maintenance. We have to vacuum it usually at least once a year, just because of being in New England with sand and salt. But I leave that up to the civil engineer as to what's best practices.
It's just your issue, in my view, isn't whether there's a dormer or not. I would have no dormers, but you know, we don't design the buildings. You know, the issue is the you know, impervious area. That's the issue. So,
okay. Thank you.
Good.
I guess It's up to you if you want to come in formally and work that out with Maren as far as what our agenda is. We're April, May.
Depends on when the application comes in.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 7 o'clock. We're allowed. Yeah?
No, we have, this Hager Homestead.
Oh, Hager Homestead's not coming through.
Right, Hager Homestead, they will, yeah.
They'll continue until another time.
Right, so the general question was, given
Thank you.
their timing for construction, is there room to have a discussion about the affordability level of one of the units to help offset some of the construction cost overruns? One of the things they did mention was the lack of being able to get a transformer for the multifamily building.
I have the same.
When he said that, I was thinking someone else has told me that recently.
Everyone's having fun.
But they'll be ready, oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I have an idea for them. I think that they should go back to their original developer and try to get the developer to donate the funding that's needed in lieu of the
Well,
planning
actually, we're
board.
not hearing it. I don't even know why you
Right.
brought it up. We're not going to hear it until, we'll discuss it then.
Right, they wanted to come first with an informal, and they'll, if you wish, they'll do a presentation when they're ready. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Anything else? We're at 7 o'clock. How are we doing?
Yes. Is that the continued public hearing for sanctuaries?
Thank you to the members of the board and to Myron. We're here with our team again today. It was our hope that we would hopefully be able to close the public hearing and move on to the decision. As I think you will have seen in consultation with Myron, we realized that it would be more prudent to include the registered marijuana dispensary special permit in this renewal. It had been our assumption that given the procedures for the advent of the adult use special permit, that those two permits were merged when the adult use, special permit was issued in December. But again, in consultation with Maren and just to be over-inclusive, that the new permit could reflect the RMD use also.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder. We have the new public hearing notice.
Okay.
We'll get to that shortly. He was describing why we got here. Town council had the question of, is it necessary to renew their registered medical marijuana special permit, and recommended that application. They followed right away with an application. Thank you. So, consolidated public hearing, registered marijuana dispensary, adult use marijuana establishment, and water resource district special permits. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a consolidated public hearing on Thursday, March 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in room 103 of the town offices at 37 Shattuck Street to consider applications for special permits pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, and the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. The application is to add a request to extend a prior registered marijuana dispensary special permit under sections 173, 186 through 173, 193 of the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning to the prior applications for adult use marijuana establishment special permits and water resource district special permits under section 173-61 through 173-64 and 173-193 through 173-203 of the Code of the Town of Littleton zoning. Property location is 234 Taylor Street, Assessor's Map R9, Parcel 34. Applicant Sanctuary Medicinals. The applicant is seeking to extend a prior registered marijuana dispensary special permit renew an adult-use marijuana established special permit as a marijuana cultivator and a marijuana product manufacturer, and amend the Water Resource District special permits to allow continuation of current marijuana cultivation and processing and a new building addition. And it goes on to explain where you can find the application and plans and where you can provide comments.
So that is just a housekeeping thing on our part, because there are 2 licenses there, correct?
And you and I have had this discussion several times over the years, whether or not the adult use marijuana bylaw replaced the RMD. That's what we thought happened. We're not sure that really
Right, so that's what we're
happened,
doing it
so.
as a housekeeping, so that we have both
Right,
permits.
right, so
It's not that
this is
they're-
all encompassing, not in, right.
They're not changing anything, they're just acknowledging both licenses.
Right, and so just adding this part of the public hearing to the current open public.
I just want to make everyone aware that we're not increasing anything out there or anything else. They have both licenses now. We're acknowledging that they have both licenses. And later on, we'll see why we want to have both licenses. But for right now, they have both
So,
licenses.
Mr. Chair, and this is the correct question, so is Sanctuary Medicinals, Inc. a for-profit or a nonprofit entity?
To my knowledge, it is a for-profit. Correct.
So that goes to the whole notion of the RMD, also known as a medical marijuana treatment center, based off of our Littleton bylaws. And that bylaw states that in order to be an RMD in Littleton, the entity has to be a nonprofit. And Sanctuary surrendered that right when it became a for-profit entity in July of 2018. So I don't think that you can have an RMD based on our bylaw.
So you can certainly ask the question of town council.
You'll find out why that's pertinent in about half an hour.
Oh, I get it. I
Okay,
understand why it's
well-
pertinent. I'm just saying that looking at this in this manner currently means that this entity is not legally able to be an RMD in Littleton
We issued it already.
when they were a nonprofit
I
in
don't-
The
2017.
description, though, when it refers to treatment, I don't understand how that
That was-
applies.
Well, that was some of the old wording. When recalling the history of marijuana in Massachusetts, Littleton was a yes community. He eventually adopted a medical marijuana bylaw, and it uses the same terms as were used in the statutes and the CCC regulations at the time. It included a treatment center wording, but the proposal is for cultivation
Right.
and processing.
And I understand that it's for
Yeah.
cultivation processing, but in order to have a special permit for an RMD, AKA a medical marijuana treatment center, our bylaw stipulates that the entity must be a nonprofit, which makes complete sense, because if you're doing medical marijuana, then...
But this doesn't, they're making products.
They're not treating it.
They're not treating it.
No, I'm not arguing.
Okay.
You know what?
Okay.
We're going to let town council handle that part of it, okay? Can we just finish what we started, okay? So you have, do you have any more input? Are we going to, any more input as to what's?
We were open to hear if the board had any further questions, but our assumption following the last meeting was that the presentation of information from the applicant had been satisfied.
Okay.
So the updated information we do have is input from the water department that is working with the property owner on siting groundwater monitoring wells at this location. Because before there was a question whether or not that was proposed, and it is proposed.
Okay.
I just had a question about the letter from March 6th, which refers to condition 20. What are we talking about?
That, I believe, was, there's a draft decision that was on the website. We were looking at that condition 20.
Yeah. Do we have, I thought I printed it out, but I don't have it.
So, Mr. Yates, if you want me to expound on that.
Yeah, please.
So I think the concern that I raised with that is that, in particular, the enforcement mechanism that was contemplated by condition 20 is a departure from the traditional enforcement mechanism that's available under the Zoning Act. And there are elements of the proposal as it reads in condition 20 that I think is likely to breed a considerable amount of confusion about timelines for when things happen, when the building inspector has an obligation to respond, when a complainant would know whether or not zoning enforcement was being undertaken. So my primary critique of that proposed condition is that I think it is going to cause more confusion going forward than relying on the enforcement mechanism that is available through the Zoning Act, which is much more established. And I think that to the extent such a complainant wanted to bring something to the attention of the zoning enforcement officer, following those traditional mechanisms would provide more reliability than, as I describe it, somewhat of an ad hoc procedure that is built into this permit.
Is there sort of implied that it's not even, you said something about the Zoning Act. Is it, are you sort of implying that it's not even appropriate under this enforcement? I'm sort of curious about that language.
The critique was on the procedure that's prescribed just in condition 20. I think is more the concern.
Do we have it?
Condition 20.
Right, condition 20 was the suggestion that the order.
Which we had a lot of discussion about this, yeah.
Yeah, it's making the building commissioner the enforcement officer.
And currently the building commissioner is who?
Right now.
Building commissioner is
Ed Mullen.
Is it Ed Mullen?
No, Ed.
Is the
He's
commissioner.
He's still officially on.
Correct. And
there's an alternate as well.
And from a historical perspective, I recall, dating back to 2018, that Ed Mullen said that he had a personal relationship with the owners at that time and asked whether or not, it would be okay for him to continue to even be a part of this. So from my standpoint, having Ed Mullen as our building commissioner overseeing this is sort of like the fox watching the hen house.
So you prefer alternate commissioner? Is it that? That's process that can be accomplished, yeah.
We just had a lot of discussion about this. And you have to understand that the whole drawn-out process is responding to people who complain about, and that's why we've given this extra special consideration. So to remove this condition at this point, I don't know. I'm having a hard time with that.
Where does town council weigh in on it? Then leave it in.
So town council is available, has zoomed into the meeting.
Okay, well, why don't we bring Chris in? That's Chris, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, we have to test the audio.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for standing by.
So on the question of enforcement, we contributed a little bit to the draft decision. So I think some of what you're looking at in condition 20 is at least in part, stuff that we worked on. But I will say that I think the applicant's counsel has something of a point here in the sense that Chapter 48 does provide a procedural mechanism for enforcement of both the zoning bylaw and any special permits and any conditions contained in special permits going forward. And the way that would normally work is that if anyone believes, anyone, including town officials, board members, abutters, or members of the public generally believe that a condition is being violated, they have the ability to go to the building commissioner, make a written request for zoning enforcement, and the building commissioner is required by statute to respond to that request and investigate whether there's an actual zoning violation occurring. So I think the enforcer of the special permit and the special permit conditions is pursuant to state law under Chapter 48, the building commissioner. That is necessarily who will enforce the permit. And in terms of fielding, investigating, and responding to any concerns that the permit is being violated, that is all mapped out in Chapter 48 itself, how that works and how the building commissioner must respond to it. So I think to the extent we're looking for a mechanism to enforce this permit going forward, the ordinary procedure for doing that would already exist under state law.
So you're saying we're not going to be damaged anyway if we strike 20 off of our conditions of approval?
I don't believe the board or the town would be prejudiced in any way by striking 20 and relying on, well, not that I can think of, by striking condition 20 and relying on Chapter 48, Section 7 and Section 8, which are the sections that provide for enforcement of the permit going forward.
So just so that we're clear, I really want to make sure I'm clear on this. So item number 20 says the approach to handling air pollution complaints, including any odor complaints, shall include, and it identifies the process. You're saying that we just eliminate that and that's okay? Then what enforcement do we have that's actually understandable to the public?
Well, looking at 20, what 20A does, which does not exist under state law, is say that if the applicant fields a complaint from anyone, they need to share that with the building commissioner and the planning. In the end, if that's not there, that need not happen under state law. But if we proceed on to 20B, the building commissioner, upon receiving a complaint, may, in his discretion, investigate the complaint and may take into consideration the following factors. That is true whether we put 20B in there or not. The building commissioner, upon receiving a complaint, I would say, has to investigate the complaint under state law. He may have some discretion as to whether or not, he may have some discretion as to the enforcement action he takes in response to that investigation. But B is, I believe, saying something that would be true under state law regardless.
But B is a guide to someone who has a complaint. I mean, I think Anna's point is well taken, that
does it matter if we leave it in?
Yeah.
I mean, just because we're being redundant about it?
So, if I may, I think that Attorney Heap was on the right track. And as I said in my letter, I do have a concern about imposing a condition that is not already in your bylaw, because I think that would be an infirmity. But while I push back on that, and I push back on condition 20 for that reason, I think that relying on the mechanisms that are available under the Zoning Act actually make this process simpler and easier for the town to administer. In particular, the interplay between A and B, I think, is muddled, and will cause confusion. If somebody lodges a complaint with the building commissioner under the Zoning Act, the building commissioner has a set number of days to respond to that person. To the extent that they fail to, that can give rise to the person to take further enforcement of the building commissioner's lack of taking enforcement, either to the ZBA in most circumstances. However, as you have this written, with the written complaint going to the applicant first, I think those timelines are going to be muddied. And the individual is not going to know precisely when a complaint was sent to the building commissioner and when their period for seeking further enforcement or further review of a building commissioner's failure to undertake enforcement. All of this is covered in the Zoning Act. And I don't think that this, with all due respect to Chris, I don't think this ad hoc version gives you anything. And to the extent that there's a concern specifically about odor complaints, as I noted in my letter, we are agreeing that what is now condition 21, compliance with the odor management plan, be a condition of the special permit, such that if there were incidents where the odor management plan was not being complied with, that could give rise to a request for enforcement to the building commissioner. I think the tools are there. I think pushing for again, my term, an ad hoc enforcement provision as you've laid out in 20 is problematic.
What is more problematic, A or B?
Quite candidly, A is the bigger problem.
I sort of agree with you.
But I think, as Attorney Heap said, B is already in the Zoning Act.
Except B would also be in our written, well, would it be? It's not a bylaw, it's a condition, so.
Right,
So it really
as a
wouldn't be.
condition, we can basically say whatever we as a board determine we want to see happen or not happen. It doesn't have to be in the bylaw to be a condition.
I think in the area of cannabis and under the state regulations, there is a provision that says the concern at the state level was towns exerting, again, my term, ad hoc conditions on marijuana cultivation facilities. And so there is a provision in the state regulation that says if you're going to impose a condition at a local approval level, that it needs to be consistent with your bylaw. And there's no provision in your bylaw that says you can have an independent enforcement mechanism written into the special permit. However, again, I think that you have that ability through the Zoning Act, and we don't need to have a battle royale over whether or not this provision can be in there, because under law, you already have a mechanism for this.
So I want to be really clear about what I want. I want to be able to see in our decision, however Chris is able to craft it, I would like to make sure that our residents have the ability to make complaints, that those are publicly known. We've talked about that in terms of the website, that then there is a mechanism to address those complaints. And then finally, if those complaints are not addressed, then there need to be consequences to sanctuary for not dealing with it. So those are the things that I want to see throughout all of this. And so if this isn't going to work, then perhaps Chris can identify for us what will.
Chris, I guess it's back in your court. Will this work as it is for everything Anna just asked for?
So any request, any complaint filed with the building commissioner or request for zoning enforcement filed with the building commissioner would be a public record, available to anybody who ever wanted to request a copy. So those are public records. Complaints sent directly to sanctuary and not to the building commissioner are a private matter that would not be compiled or in any way that could be accessed or available to the public unless there were some condition included like 20A. In terms of there being consequences to in response to the complaints that are filed, that depends entirely on whether sanctuary is in violation of a condition contained in its permit. I will say that it is, I think, important to note that complaints in and of themselves don't suggest that there's a zoning violation. The building commissioner will need to investigate either under condition 20 or under state law. The building commissioner will need to investigate any complaint that they receive and make an independent determination whether a condition of the permit is being violated. If a condition of the permit is being violated, then consequences, I would expect, should follow. If the conditions are not being violated, then there will be no consequences at all.
So hence, the reason why we need to put a condition in there, so that if it is violated, there will be consequences.
You don't need to, no, you don't know. What you need to do is tell Sanctuary what they need to do relative to odor. And if they hit that mark, then they're in compliance with their permit. If they, if a complaint is received and the building commissioner goes out and investigates and they have not done what they're supposed to do, then the building commissioner can apply consequences through zoning enforcement. But you don't need a condition in the permit that says there will be consequences for failure to comply with the permit. That goes without saying.
Can we look at this condition as a belt and suspenders? I mean, I'm taking all this in, but I don't see the problem with having this in the decision.
For my own part, I guess I would say that I think the condition 20, I think I appreciate the applicant's concerns about a process that is similar to but departs somewhat from the established procedure under state law. But I will say that I think it strikes me as sufficiently close to the procedure included in Chapter 40A that I don't know that I detect much in the way of danger to the applicant in how the enforcement would work under Chapter 20, under Condition 20A. So it strikes me as something that is not necessarily required in order to ensure that there's going to be adequate enforcement of the permit going forward, but it also strikes me as a condition that shouldn't impact the applicant terribly much one way or the other, I wouldn't think.
Wait, stop. I'm good. So, in order to get all of us to vote on it, I think we need to leave it in there. It's not hurting you that it's in there. I think we would feel more comfortable with it. We've heard enough about it. I think we'll just leave it in there. I think we've noted your concern.
It is undiscovered country. You are going to find more problems, more litigation over when a complaint was received, when an enforcement action should or should not have occurred, than you would if you were defaulting by the very well-developed laws and decisional law under the Zoning Act. You are creating something new that is candidly quite flawed, and I think it is in error. Okay. And I think that you have, again, with draft condition 21, making compliance with the odor management plan a condition of this permit. I believe that the concern about having a mechanism to ensure that there is some enforcement mechanism available if there is a deficiency in compliance with the odor management plan, it is built in there. 20 is problematic.
Okay, you've stated your case.
My understanding of Chris's discussion was that 20A is not included in the state rule that we're talking about. And 20A gives the residents of the neighborhood an opportunity to complain directly to the applicant. And that's going to be easier for them than coming down to town hall and finding the building commissioner. So I would very much like to keep A in there to make complaints easier. I wouldn't object to either making the rest of this go away or have Chris make it exactly parallel to whatever the state says. But I think that the
Actually-
20A being,
Right, let's not lose the sight of Commissioner can act on written complaints and
right. but
can't
the-
act on verbal complaints.
But this says that if the applicant receives any complaint, any written complaint associated with this operation, it shall provide a copy of the complaint to the building commissioner within 24 hours. So
Right,
that's a
and-
mechanism to keep,
Right,
to start
right,
the process.
and that's, that's not the point I was trying to make. If, for example, an email were come to the building department, and it's a signed complaint, then the building commissioner has to act on that. So it's not a matter of somebody coming into town hall and making a verbal complaint. So,
Well,
I tried.
So, Mr. Chair, I saw that select woman hand was up, so.
Go ahead.
This is a question as a resident. Karen Morrison, Spruce Street. You mentioned that the odor management plan is part of the special permit, and the special permit is what would a violation of the special permit, but would constitute a zone violation. And so as a resident, my question is, does the odor management plan dictate the means of odor management, or does it establish what an effective odor management plan results in? I think residents, as a resident who's smelled what's growing there from far away, I have no idea if the odor management plan says, you have to do this in your building and you have to have this filter and that filter. As a resident, I'm not going to know whether that's a violation or whether I have any bearing, or whether I have any standing to make a complaint based on that. I'm only going to know what I smell and that I find it offensive or,
Exactly, and that, then when a complaint about smell comes in, then it's the town's duty to determine if there's a violation. So
There is an odor management plan in place, there is upgrades to the system and everything else, that's all part of the submission and the decision here. It's just what happens if something happens, that's what we're talking about right now.
I guess, right, so we're not asking the residents to understand the
The odor
details of
management.
the odor management plan, where the town is expecting the business owner, operator to comply with it
Right.
and work with the building department on, do they comply? On zoning enforcement of whether they do comply.
So I guess if I could follow up, as a resident, I call and I say, this is what I smell, and you call back and say, well, they investigated, and they're not in violation of the odor management plan because they put all the filters in place and they're running properly, then that's not a violation no matter what I'm smelling or
Well,
what
first
all
of all,
my
you have to
neighbors are
put it in
smelling.
writing. You have to do
Sure,
it in
yeah,
writing.
sorry, assuming it's all in writing, yeah.
Well, then they have to go and investigate.
Right, and whatever the response is from zoning enforcement, you can appeal that to the zoning board of appeals.
So, we've had a lot of hearings on this and a lot of odor management consultants and experts, and it seems like the odor issues stem from some kind of malfunction, whether sometimes it's a gasket of a piece of equipment, sometimes it's a door open. And so this whole hearing and conditions has, we're using the opportunity for them to build an addition to this building that is not for cultivation, but will presume it that is designed to make these glitches less possible and upgrade the mechanical systems. So if you had a complaint and you smelled something, and it's very likely that they would know what caused it if they're operating the building properly. They have a whole protocol about, this gets changed now, this can blah, blah, blah. And, obviously we're not experts, but if there's a smell, then there's a problem, you call, and it seems like the building operator, from all that this whole line of people here, have committed to sort of dealing with it. But that's not to say it won't ever happen, and that's not to say you shouldn't complain if you do smell it.
There are mechanisms in place to deal with it more than there were before when they first started, and more equipment involved, different, higher, newer technology to deal with it, and that's all being put in as part of the approval that we're working on right now. So it's not just belts and suspenders, it's an increased use of newer technology than what was done 5 years ago.
Well, and also more careful
Yes.
maintenance and operation. I think what they brought on is an actual person to be responsible for odor management, and that's you.
Yeah, how many hearings have we had about this? I mean.
Yeah, so
takes whatever
it's
it takes.
it's very interesting because we learned a lot about
Yeah, I mean, it's been
even
very
the odor.
worthwhile, but we've
from
had
the
a
odor
lot.
management experts, they're like incredulous that anyone would feel like there's never any odor. I mean, their attitude is there's always odor. You know, it's just whether you're affected by it. They talked about jars and this and that. You know, I mean, it's so anyway. So there's been on the basis of, I don't know, we've had 6 hearings or
At least.
there's been a steadily focused attention on the business owner's part on this issue. And that's not to say, I don't think we could sit here and say there's never going to be any odor problem. But if there is, and this is why I want to keep these conditions in here, if there is, then there's this invitation to jump on it. And they're, you know, as a business, their incentive is to just step on any problem that there is. But in the past, there's been a continuous odor problem. And we're told that will be a thing of the past.
Okay.
I had a quick question.
Tom?
Howard Schneider, 32 Crane Road. I'm around the corner. We walked our dog tonight and we smelled it, okay? So it's more of a problem than I think, but like having A in there to me is a little ludicrous because, okay, you guys have a problem, we'll send it to you. How do we know they're gonna send it into the town? I think if the residents all knew that we can send an email, right? Is that what you're saying to the
Building commissioner.
Yes.
building commissioner,
Yes.
and he has to act on that, and that's now public record.
Mhm.
So at least you would have an idea of how many were sent and when and by whom. I think that's way better. So in other words, you can leave A in. I don't really care because I would never complain to these guys.
Mhm.
But like tonight I walked by, now that I know I can write an email, I'd send an email and
Yep.
say, hey, you know, we'll
You
walk
gotta-
our
you
dog
gotta-
tonight.
you gotta
It
sign
stunk
it.
to holy hell.
You
What do
gotta,
you mean you have to sign?
you gotta sign it. You gotta tell us when you send the
Right,
email.
no anonymous emails.
Yeah,
No,
you
no,
can-
I would send it from my
Right, and
email, I'd
that's-
sign, but it
and
wouldn't be
that's-
electronic signature, would just say Howie Schneider, 32
Okay.
Green Road.
Okay.
And that's
My
not
email,
new,
my
and that's
phone.
not changed by anything that you do or don't
I
include
know,
in
but
the
now we're
decision.
making everybody aware that that's.
No, but I'm just saying, if we all in the neighborhood knew that's what you had to do, at least that'd be public record. By sending it to the company,
Yeah.
I'm saying these guys are probably very honest and really trying hard, but I wouldn't do that first. I would do that because we know a couple of our neighbors have tried to work with the company, and and they're closer than we are, and the smell is there, and it's there a lot. So, and I don't want these guys to go out of business. I like having them. I think it's good for the town. I thought that the building was going to be to grow more, but it sounds like the building is going to improve the operations, which is wonderful. I think it's great.
Okay.
So I don't have an issue with these guys. I just think that there is a smell. It's real.
Okay.
It's not imagined by, the people who live right there. We're a little further, so we only get it on certain days. But if you walk the dog up there, and we have a big dog, so we can't go to the dog park.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders, very quickly, please.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, with regards to the smell, one, I want to know I sent a letter to the town administrator that he was sending to all the members on the planning board and the select board. Asked during the peer review whether or not those carbon filters they said was carbon charcoal filters. We get an answer on that?
Carbon charcoal, correct?
It's charcoal, yes.
No, not from the...
Activated charcoal.
Yeah, we got a response back.
From the consultant. What did the consultant say?
The applicant said that the carbon charcoal filters.
I didn't say the applicant, I said the consultant.
We did not have a peer review.
It's not done yet.
No,
there's no one available to do
You
it.
got to give some better information than that, Mr. Chairman, because I sent the request in, I asked that, I got a response saying that that would be forward as a part of it. Now I'm hearing that you didn't do it, this or that. What's going on here?
If you, Mark, if you recall, we had searched for an odor peer reviewer. There was none. And so
The planning board did it of this, we did it ourselves. We had them come and we acted as peer review on it. It was carbon charcoal, that's what they, I believe we even have cut sheets on it somewhere.
that's the
Information they gave us, carbon charcoal.
Well, before, Mr. Chairman, all they were saying was carbon. And then when I spoke at the last meeting, when I brought it up and said that the carbon will not get rid of the smell, then a gentleman sitting there where, Madam, it was you, okay, said that it was carbon charcoal filter.
It's activated charcoal. Forget the carbon. Drop the carbon. It's activated charcoal.
Okay?
Well, okay. The other thing that I had with regards to this, I think that if anybody, the problem is where people are getting the smell, mean that it's getting outside of the building and getting into the environment. That's why they're smelling, okay? So, they're saying they're going to control, there's going to be no smell that's going to go outside the building and get into the environment so people won't be able to smell it. My suggestion is that, first of all, there's no other operation that is in existence of what they have right now. They've been told that this will work. You don't know it'll work. They don't know it'll work. And the people that told them that it'll work don't know it will work. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to give them the opportunity to put the system in full operation. And I would say give them a limit, permit, maybe for a year, and see if there's any odor that's in the surrounding area of the community there and people are smelling it. And the other suggestion is that if anybody smells any, they should file their complaint with the town. Not with the applicant, with the town. And I think that you should include that if you get an email that is validated with the person signed down there and send an email to the building department, there should be a sufficient notification to the town that there is a problem. And you need to include, because email is the way of the life today. And they accept emails. So that is what needs to be done. And I say, give them a chance. I hope it works, Mr. Chairman. I'm not against them. I just hope it works. But I don't think it needs to be invading our privacy to the point that we cannot enjoy our home in and out in our surrounding environment of our property. We have the right to be able to utilize that and not have to deal with that smell. So I say give them a chance and see what happens. And then you will know. If it works, then they can come back in, then you can give them the maximum time for the permit. Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, thank you. All right, I think we're done with this?
Yeah.
So-
I would just like to say that overall, I still would like to understand what the reason is for the RMD, because they already have another permit through the marijuana establishment. That has never been clear. It's brand new tonight. We have never heard about this RMD request until tonight.
We asked them to do it, okay? We need 2 licenses, okay?
Okay.
They have 2. We want to
All right.
acknowledge they have 2 licenses. That's why we asked it.
Okay, when you say we asked it, who's we?
We as the town,
Okay, well, this is the
Correct?
first I've heard of it.
yes, okay. We asked them as the town, and you're gonna find out in about 15 minutes why we asked them.
Okay. Well, so, fine.
Okay, I'll tell you right now. I'll cut to the chase. We asked them because we're gonna try to limit the amount of licenses in the town of Littleton. We only want 2. They have both of them, so nobody else is going to be able to come into the town of Littleton and get
We're not gonna
another.
be able to limit it to 2.
Well, but that's what we're trying to do, okay? So that they have both licenses, so no one else, that's our 745. That's why we asked them to acknowledge both licenses.
So they'll
okay?
have a monopoly.
Yeah, we don't want it, we'll deal with it later, okay?
Yeah, all right, so
We're
one
on-
final thing, and that is that we need to go through this decision. There are several things that have not been included in the decision that we had talked about, and so I want to make sure that we make time to be able to do that. If tonight is not the night, then we need to be able to have time to do that.
We already sent this out to town council, right? And they-
Town council provided the version that was posted. We got comments from Attorney Durning earlier, and just sent those to town council and that's spurred some of this discussion.
So one of the things that's really important is for us to be able to see the decision, then comment on the decision. If we just got it, how can we comment on it? And if we're not going to do it tonight, then we need opportunity to do it in the future. Plus, that also gives us an opportunity to hear what town council says about RMD.
Do you want to continue this, or you?
Can we close the hearing tonight?
We can close the hearing.
No, we can't close the hearing because then we can't ask any more questions and information.
Chris, just to double check, do you prefer that deliberations be done inside the hearing or out? Or after the hearing is closed, deliberations on conditions?
If the board wants to deliberate further after closing the public hearing, that's perfectly fine. That could include conversations with town council. I think the only thing that would do is prevent the board from turning back to the applicant for more information.
Right, and we're not supposed to.
If the hearing was closed.
Okay, so then why don't we leave it open until April 4th? By that time, we'll all have a chance to look at it, we'll have a chance to circle back with you. Chris?
Can I offer one quick additional response to Anna's question from earlier? It's my understanding that there's been a change in state law since the bylaws were first adopted in town, such that RMDs can no longer be required to be nonprofits.
And
So
I
that's-
understand that, but it still says so in our town bylaw. So our town bylaw is not superseded by that state.
Yes, it is.
It is. There should probably be a bylaw change to reconcile the two, but it's my understanding that the change in state law was of the type that would preempt a local bylaw that said something different.
Okay.
All right.
Can you?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm done, I'm just concluding and pushing this so we can all have a chance to look at it. And
So if we're going to persist on the RMD, one of the things, again, it's in our bylaw, and the last time it was approved in 2017, is regarding the location. Whoever was on the board at that time approved it, saying that the Liberty Square was not a park. Well, it is a park, and it is a park, but the one thing that has come to my attention from the residents who say that their children are waiting at the corner of the streets, waiting for the bus, and it says that no RMD is allowed where persons under the age of 18 commonly congregate to participate in scheduled or structured activities. Waiting for a bus is a structured activity. And every single day, those children have to stay there and wait and smell it. I do not believe that that location can have an RMD, whether it's because they're a nonprofit or not, and whether because of their cited location. So,
Judith said, okay, we're gonna continue this to the 4th of April. Okay? Thank you. All right, we have,
So do this one early in the evening,
Yeah,
do
early in the
right
evening.
6:15, and
yep. We have 7:30 self-storage, have they continued?
So the request from 550 Newtown Road, the self-storage site, is that the board continue the public hearing. I did let them know that, in my opinion, that application is getting stale because there has been no new information in such a long time. And with the likely turnover in membership of the board, I would suggest that you vote to continue one more time and caution the applicants that ask to withdraw and reapply once they have information ready for the board.
Okay.
So continue to April 4th. At what time? Just pick.
You pick a time.
Let's do this one, 6:30, whatever.
All right, so we have a 7:35. Planning board discussion, amending zoning bylaw, registered marijuana dispensaries without use marijuana to limit the number of potential marijuana cultivation sites. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Ivrea is.
Ivrea is on?
Yep, she is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, how are you tonight? So I submitted some letters. A request had been made to explore the opportunity to limit the number of cultivators in town. And so, as I explained, you can definitely limit the number of cultivators. There's sort of two processes that are established under the bylaw, under the statute. One limitation, a straight ban, would need to be approved by the voters. So if you're interested in exploring that, we would need to make sure that we understand kind of the more general impacts that would require voter approval. Besides that, if you want to limit cultivation, you can do so provided you don't restrict it below the number of medical marijuana facilities that are permitted to cultivate. And so your medical marijuana bylaw right now says that you have one special permit for a medical marijuana facility. So you need to allow at least one cultivator. The trick is that there are multiple different types of cultivator licenses under the regulatory scheme that the Cannabis Control Commission created. The Attorney General's Division of Local Government Municipal Law Unit has not opined on how they interpret this restriction. So the conservative approach would be to allow one of each of the various types of cultivators in order to ensure that you do not have to go to the ballot. So I presented a draft bylaw, which not only limits the number of cultivator special permits available, but also can consolidate your medical marijuana bylaw and your adult use marijuana bylaw into one that will streamline the process and make it all contained. The need to have two different bylaws has dissipated with the consolidation from the DPH program into the Cannabis Control Commission program. So I think I'll pause there. This is really a policy decision how the board wants to move forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So if we don't want any more, we have one or the two, however you want to call it. How do we do that without having to put a warrant? It's not even a warrant out. It has to go to.
Okay, so if the proposed bylaw is a zoning bylaw amendment, and that would go to town meeting,
right,
and that could limit it to no more than, we think, 4 grow facilities, 4 special permits for grow facilities.
4 special permits.
4 special permits, so medical, and this is where I get lost on it, the 4 different types.
Yeah, so there would be the medical cultivator, there would be a traditional cultivator, there would be a micro business, and a craft cooperative. So those are the 4 types of licenses that the Cannabis Control Commission issues that authorizes cultivation.
Could you tell us what the other 2 are? Can you?
Yeah, so a craft cultivator is, it's supposed to be like a craft cooperative where you have smaller businesses kind of coming together to work together. And so, you know, they can have an ownership structure that benefits smaller scales, but they can cultivate at the same range of any other cultivator, so it can be a large scale. Micro business is the same as sort of targeted residents, smaller growers, and they are capped at a level 1 tier cultivator, so very tiny.
So if we do nothing right now, how many grow establishments can we have?
So right now, you don't have any limits on adult use cultivators. You can have as many as apply and come in. From a medical standpoint, you are restricted to issuing just 1 special permit for a medical, and you've already done that.
Okay. So the only other way, without going back to the voters and actually put it on a ballot that they have to come and vote on, not at town meeting, this is a regular vote. You have to come out during elections and vote on it, correct? That would limit it
Correct.
to
So the way that
two.
the process works for communities that want to ban any type of marijuana use or marijuana establishment is that they present the bylaw to town meeting approves it, and then that goes on the ballot, and the voters either vote it up or down.
Okay, so our best case scenario, easiest, is what we're talking about. We have 1 medical and 1 regular cultivator, and then we're limited to 2 more specialty ones. That gives us 4, and that's it, and we can do that at town meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Otherwise, we have to put a bylaw together to restrict it to the 2 that we have, get it past the town meeting, and then, at a later date, have a vote. They have to actually do it when they go vote for the president or whatever they're doing, when we have an actual election. Or have we,
Right,
or a
so
special
if
election just for that?
If you wanted to restrict it to 1 adult use cultivator and prohibit the micro business and prohibit the craft cooperative, it's unclear to me whether the Attorney General's office would uphold that bylaw absent a ballot question. I think the safer course of action is to just limit it to 4, 1 of each of the types.
So what you're saying is we could still do it at town meeting, and then we're taking our chances.
Correct, because it's, you know, those are technically they're different types of licenses that aren't available from the medical side, but they are a cultivator license, and it's just, we're walking kind of in unknown waters here, and so an argument could be made that you can't prohibit those types of uses, and so the safer course of action would be to set a bylaw that restricts it to the 4 different types of special permits. And like I said, micro business and craft cultivators are sort of unique types of licenses. Generally speaking, we don't see them out that frequently in town.
So we could take a chance and put a bylaw together and just limit to the 2 that we have right now and take our chances. That's what I'm trying to say. Rather than go the extra 9 yards, and then somebody would have to appeal our decision or appeal this to the Attorney General's office to see if it holds muster or not, but at least we have something in place that limits to what we have in town right now, and that's it.
You could do that. You would likely get a warning from the Attorney General's office to ask town council whether you think a ballot vote is needed. And then to the extent someone comes in and tries to apply for one of those 2 prohibited types of licenses, I think the safer course of action is to move forward with all 4, 1 of each.
And then take a chance whether somebody comes in for the other 2. Right.
Well, it would be the same result.
I would advise that you limit it to 1 of each type of license.
Right, but that means
Unless you
2
want
more
to go to the
licenses
ballot.
could still be sent out there, 1 for a co-op coming together to grow as much pot as they want, or 1 for a small little...
Micro business.
Right,
Mhm.
micro. So we would still have 2 more licenses. So the point is, we would still get 2 more licenses, whereas if we just.
You could receive an application for 2 more
So if we
licenses.
just say
yeah.
we're gonna leave with what we have, take our chances, go to town meeting and let the.
Because we can always go back to a ballot.
We could always keep going. If they said no, we could put it on the ballot after that. So I think the easier way to go.
So the timing is critical for a ballot, for both zoning and a ballot, though.
What do you mean?
So I don't think you
Well,
would wait
no,
until
I'm
you
saying
got.
that in the future,
No.
next year, or if we're challenged, or
If we're
something,
challenged,
yeah.
then we bring it.
But
I
so,
think-
sorry if I'm being unclear. Prohibiting any type of license requires ballot approval. So prohibiting one or more types of marijuana establishments in town requires a ballot. And so you could prohibit the aspects of micro business potentially that deal with cultivation. I'm struggling to see how you could prohibit the craft cooperative without a ballot vote.
What I'm saying is, you just said we could take the 2 that we already have, go to town meeting and say that's all we're gonna have, and forget about the rest of it, and let somebody decide that we're in violation because we prohibited those, and take our shot.
I mean, I guess, I'm sorry. My advice is that if you're going to prohibit craft cooperatives, it would require a ballot vote.
We're not-
So I think that you really would need to go to the ballot. So you should be allowing at least one of these types of licenses.
But
unless you want to go to the
we're not
ballot.
prohibiting, we're not even acknowledging they exist. All we're doing is prohibiting the fact that we already have 2 licenses, and that's all we want.
And we're being silent on that.
But
We're
they're
being silent
currently-
on the
they're-
rest of it.
They're currently in your bylaw
Right.
as an allowed use.
So, but if we will restrict that, we're only allowing 2 licenses, and we don't even address all the others, we're just allowing 2 licenses in the town of Littleton, and we go to town meeting, we get that approved, then it's up to somebody else to come and tell us that we're in violation, because we're not allowing those other 2 licenses. We're taking a shot, but it's the easiest way, and if we get shot at, then we have to go to the ballot afterwards. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get it at town meeting for May, if we decide to go there. We're gonna wait till October and do it then, if we're not gonna do it in May. But my point is, the easiest way is to put something on the ballot and let somebody appeal our decision and then have to do the ballot afterwards.
Isn't the
Does that make
deadline
more
March
sense?
25th?
What?
Isn't the deadline March 25th to get something on?
Well, we've got a placeholder.
We do, okay, great.
So I guess
I know you don't like us to skirt the law. I get
Right,
that.
and
You're trying to tell us not to skirt the law, and I'm saying that for the most protection we can get is to be naive about it. How about that for a better way of putting it? We have 2 licenses now. We're gonna say we don't want any more than 2 licenses. Put that on the ballot. We're only allowing the 2 licenses that we have. That's gonna be it, and that's it. And if somebody wants to appeal our decision, then
And Mr. Chair, when you say 2 licenses, are you talking about the marijuana retailer or the product manufacturer? Because we
Just-
have 2 of each.
we're just talking about manufacturing.
Cultivation.
Cultivation. That's all we're talking about is cultivation.
Okay, so then it's just sanctuary.
So it has 2.
It has one
so
of each.
you would like your bylaw to say that there shall only be
As a
2
MRB
special
or
permits
RB.
issued for cultivation.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about. Cultivation, 2 special permits for cultivation only. And we already have them issued, and we're not
That's
going to
why
issue anymore.
they asked them to
No.
apply for an RMD.
That's why we asked that.
As part of this special permit.
Okay? That's
So
what we're
then it
trying to
would
do,
be-
so we can bring something before us at town meeting that says we're only gonna allow 2 special permits for cultivation. That's all we're gonna say. And then let the voters decide if they want that. We have 2 now, we don't want any more in the town. Let them vote on it at town meeting, and then if the Attorney General sends it back, then we have to start again. But for at least it gives us some protection about anyone else coming in who wants to cultivate in the town of Littleton. I didn't say you were gonna
Okay,
like it. Okay?
So
Okay,
we're talking about a lot of different types and being able to identify these types and being able to identify who our current businesses are in each of the types, I think would be really helpful for my brain. I have something that, I don't know who created it, it's called Town of Littleton Adult Use Marijuana Establishment Types, and it outlines each different type, talks about the number of establishments allowed and the current establishments. So if we could have that updated, so that we can at least have a sense of everything that we currently have, to be able to then say, okay, so if we do what you were just talking about, this is what will happen. If we,
We're only restricting cultivation right now.
right,
That's all we're
So-
doing. Because that's
so
what
then-
everyone's complaining
so-
about. But this-
right.
Go ahead.
So then, that means that all of these other ones will continue to be, craft cooperative will be unlimited, the micro business will be
No,
unlimited.
we're,
No.
We're prohibiting those.
Okay, that's part of what I
And,
don't
and, and, yeah, we're
understand.
prohibiting them, and Ivrea's point is that we
can't.
really should allow one of each to be safe and comfortable. But
Why are why do you want to prohibit them? That's, talk about.
Nobody wants.
Because I don't want to
Well,
hear
I get the
anymore.
cultivation, I get
Yeah.
the cultivation, but let's also keep in mind, we're limiting tax dollars.
No,
and
we're not getting
potential
that money
dollars.
anymore. That money's gone away.
No, but just retail tax dollars.
But we're not talking about retail.
No, I know, but if you're talking about micro, some of
Those
the
are all
micro.
cultivation, micro cultivation.
Oh, okay,
They're all,
okay,
we're
sorry.
trying to get
It's
rid
been a
of
very long
cultivation
day,
here so
okay.
that we only have one
That's
issue
fine.
that we've been dealing with for 6 months.
Yeah.
We don't want any more. We want to try to figure a way to
Yeah, I'm
get it
good,
to go
I'm
away as
good.
quick
I
as
got it.
possible.
I got it.
Yeah, just quickly. Don McIver, when I was on the planning board, I actually presented marijuana bylaw to the town, and it's gotten much more complicated, and I don't understand all the details. But it strikes me, why not prohibit any of those types, but allow only one of those or two of those, wherever the limit is, to be? But you're not actually prohibiting specific licenses. Any of those can be, but can only have a maximum of one of the
So that
cultivation
means
type.
2 more licenses, 2 more cultivators can
what
come into
the
town.
attorney
We don't
is
want
suggesting.
any.
No, what I'm saying is, the concern is you're prohibiting something the state allows, and the Attorney General may, complain about it. So instead of saying you're prohibiting those other types, the micro type, et cetera, say, okay, you allow those, or, assume you allow those, and what you're limiting is the maximum number of licenses for cultivation, regardless of the type.
I understand it. So that would mean that we could have potentially three, because one has 2. We could have 3 cultivators in town. Most people in the town of Littleton want the one that we have, and that's it.
Sure, and that's
what we're trying
great.
to, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
is
and
not
that's
let
fine.
any more else.
And I'm trying to do that too.
You're not. You're letting 2 more in.
No, I'm saying it's prohibited and you can choose one of those 4 types.
No, they can't. You have to let one of each type in. So you have to have 4 different licenses.
Okay, well,
One
that's.
one has 2 already.
Mhm.
Now you can have the macro and the other one too. So you could have 2 more on
Yeah.
top of what we already have. And we already have 1. We have issues with 1. We don't want any more than, 1's a lonely number, and that's what we want to keep it at. That's what I'm trying to figure, the quickest, easiest way of doing that. I'm not saying that we're not going to get shut down and the Attorney General might send it back, but at least gets us on the warrant for May, and at least we send a message out there that we don't want any more cultivators in the town of Littleton. If they want to appeal it and appeal our
Sure.
decision, then they have the right to do it, and then we have to do something
And we
else.
have had an application for another cultivator.
And I agree, it's enough of a barrier if someone appeals it, that would discourage them, yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
I have a question for town council. If we did this and restricted it to just the 2, not one of each type, and the Attorney General threw it out, are they going to make it, will it be thrown out to where we're limiting to 1 of each type or 4? Or are they throwing it out completely where it's now the Wild West and we can get as many as we want until we pass a new law?
It's unlimited. Oh, sorry.
Right now, it's unlimited.
Yeah, so just to be clear, what I have seen is when a bylaw requires voter approval, the Attorney General's decision will read something along the lines of, we approve this bylaw because it's consistent with state law, but we believe it needs voter approval, or we encourage you to consult with town council to confirm it doesn't need voter approval. So unless there's something in the actual bylaw itself that violates state law, they tend to approve the bylaw, but then issue the caution around voter approval. To be clear, if we are prohibiting a type of license, we will need voter approval. There's no way around that.
And is there a requirement on how soon voter approval has to come after the town meeting?
No, we could do it in November, you could do it sooner if the select board decides to call an election. You need the 35, the requisite days to get the ballot, to get it on the ballot, but we can work with that.
Thank you.
So, you're saying to be on the safe side, we should limit it to the only two, go to town meeting, knowing full well that we have to have an election afterwards to solidify what we've just voted.
That would be the proper process. If you wanted to limit it to 4 special permits, one of each of the types, you could do that without going to the ballot. And so you already have a cultivator, you already have an RMD, MTC, so you would be looking at a micro business and you would be looking at a craft cooperative.
So if we wanted to get rid of those, we could put the bylaw in, vote it at town meeting in May, and have and our election in November, it could be on the ballot in November to ratify that, and then we would be good. Okay, so why don't we do it that way then?
So I have a quick question. In 2021, we limited the marijuana delivery licenses to just 2, right? So why does this process feel so much more complicated than that?
Because you're talking about prohibiting a type of license. With the delivery, you were just limiting. You're allowed to limit, that's fine. It's the prohibition that triggers the need to go to the ballot.
Okay? So is that how we want to do it? We want to put something on for Springtown meeting that we're going to limit it to 2, the 2 that we already have, the medical and the recreational, knowing full well that we're going to have to put it on the ballot for November.
And Mr. Chair, when you say that we have 2, you mean they are in our bylaw?
No, we have 2 approved already.
Well, so that's part of where I still have that question. I don't believe that Sanctuary has that RMD license. I've found documents that identify back to 2019 that they didn't have any RMD license here in Littleton.
You know what, that's a separate issue. If you want to pursue it, you brought us, they have 2 licenses. We have issued 2 licenses. As far as the town of Littleton's concerned, 2 licenses have been issued.
So we have 2 licenses to issue.
We have 2 licenses that are issued. Sanctuary has 2 licenses, correct, Mara?
That's my understanding.
2 licenses.
I would like to ask town council to please confirm that they have a valid RMD license or not, or when it expired. Because otherwise, this is a bit of a moot point.
We kind of
Right,
want
and
them to
actually
have
we
2
can-
licenses, Anna. You're
Right,
shooting
and
us in the
we can
foot.
dig into that question as soon as you're available.
Okay.
Shooting us in the foot in what way?
Well, because
We don't want any more licenses?
Yeah, we want them to be the cultivator.
They want them to have everything.
If they don't have that second license, then
Somebody
we're
else
open to
can get
have
it.
a second cultivator come in. Now we have 2 cultivators.
So wouldn't it be as simple as removing that license then from,
I don't think we can remove it.
but we're already prohibiting from our.
So maybe I can help address that. So the 94G the chapter 94G of the general laws deals with adult use. And that's where we get these requirements to go to the ballot if you're restricting specific types of adult use licenses. Medical marijuana statutory scheme does not have any language in there about going to the ballot to prohibit. However, historically, the position that the Attorney General has taken is that you can't prohibit outright an RMD from operating within your community. It's unclear whether they would still take that position now that adult use is operational in Massachusetts. Those decisions predate the adoption of adult use. So we could explore the legality of prohibiting outright medical marijuana licenses in town, but it would be a novel, to my knowledge, a novel action. I'm not aware of other communities that have done so.
Because medical came in first.
Right.
Right, and serves a particular population and fills a particular need. We have a business in town that is growing both medical and adult use marijuana.
So anyway, why don't we,
So what Anna's saying is, can we just clarify whether they actually still have this RMD?
all right, so why don't we put this on for our, we already have the language to put it at town meeting, correct?
Well, you have the language for allowing for, you've asked, I believe you're asking Ivrea to update that to allow two, and then to be followed by a ballot vote. And what I would ask from the planning board is to vote to schedule a public hearing on this.
You want to schedule it for the 3rd, or do you want to wait till after?
Well,
If we're going to try to get it on May, we should probably have it on April 3rd.
well, you could either do it on April 4th or
That's
the
right.
meeting in May, which is the 3rd, I think.
May? Isn't that a little close if we're having a town meeting?
Or
Why don't we just do it in April?
Why don't we do it in April? We'll put it on for April. April 4th. All right.
Sorry, to be clear, so the bylaw that you'd like me to draft allows one cultivation license, one RMD license, and prohibits both craft cooperatives and micro businesses?
Correct.
As cultivators.
Prohibits or silent on?
We're prohibiting them.
Prohibiting, okay.
Yeah.
Waiting to see if we get slapped.
Okay. Mark, very quickly.
What happens between May and November? When we pass this in May and it's in effect, but we have to have the ballot, is it really in effect, or is, what happens?
Do we have any grant, or we have any protection from May to November, is what Mark's asking.
Isn't it kind of like the firearm bylaw where if
That's
you
what I'm
have it
asking.
in place, so to
In
speak?
November, when do we have an election in November?
Presidential.
Election, we can put it on.
But do we, I know, but do we do?
you can have a local ballot as
We can have a
well.
local
You can have a local ballot? Oh.
Yeah. So we should be covered by that.
Well, you asked the question.
Well, yeah, why don't you make sure that we're covered if we can wait till November, if we go from May till November.
I'd have to look at that because as you know, zoning bylaws usually date back until the date of the hearing. But where it needs a ballot, I need to think about that a little bit to think whether it's effective at the time of the vote of the populace or whether it can is retroactive to the date of the hearing. So I need to think about that and I can provide an update to this board.
That would be great, thank you. Yes, George, one last before we leave.
George Sanders, 672 Gray Road. Mr. Chairman, I don't think, this is me now, I don't think that cities and towns can prohibit what the state say can be. So if the state is saying that these differences can be, how can we put in a restriction and say, no, it cannot come in? I think we're wrong about that. I think that you have to creep without a power, because if the state said these are the things you can do, we can't go against what the state says.
With a ballot, we can.
With the ballot, we can, that's why we're doing with ballot. If the town, we could vote, get rid of marijuana altogether. We don't have to have it, it's not mandatory. We could vote to restrict how we want the town of Littleton to address the marijuana issue, and that's what we're asking her to do.
Okay.
Thank you. One last, then we
Sure.
gotta go.
Sure, Don McIver, 43 Foster Street. So I think Ann brought up a good point about, is Liberty Square Park a park that prohibits a certain distance having a marijuana cultivation area? Because in the bylaw, it seemed pretty explicit stating that.
We already went through that in 2017, and we determined that it was not a park.
Okay, that's why I'm
That's
asking.
why we approved it. We already
Okay.
did this in 2017. The board that
Right,
was
and,
together.
and the bylaw also gives the, if I recall correctly, gives the planning board the authority to waive that requirement.
Okay.
But we already did that in
Okay, so that
2017. That's how they
clarifies
did.
Well, that's
their
the
license.
park portion of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
The other
yes, I know.
portion that I brought up was separate, yes.
And we're all
What town council
hoping,
look at?
let's remember that with the upgrades to this building, we're just hoping
that it works.
I mean, everything that I've seen, they're making a strong, good faith effort.
And they're spending a fair amount of money.
And they didn't
right
start
up.
out that way, and as we
pushed them.
elaborated the hearings, more and more consultants started appearing, and we had more presentations, and.
Yeah. And you have certain control there. I would think Board of Health may have other controls, and also DEP. DEP usually does the inside missions, but they also do outside missions. EPA and DEP share that, you know.
Okay, are we good? Can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Cooper, get us off.